Chapter 1131. At the same time, the three people with the masks of anger, grief, and resentment took a step forward at the same time. Their clones also moved out. The three transformations of wind, rain, and lightning erupted from their bodies, and they charged towards Su Ming from three different directions. Su Ming continued meditating with his eyes closed. A glint appeared in Zhu Yukai's eyes. He took a swift step forward and walked towards the three incoming people. At that moment, a dark smile appeared at the corners of Ring Wu's progenitor's lips. He moved and turned into distortions that charged towards Su Ming. Behind him, Virtue Rooter's progenitor, the three Almighties in Mastery Realm, and a large number of Ring Wus also took a step forward. Boom! At the edge of the fifth ocean, the galaxy beach formed by shattered stones shuddered. As it trembled, Ring Wus closed in on them, especially Ring Wus' progenitor. He was so quick that in the blink of an eye, he closed in on Su Ming. At that moment, Flame Fiend's progenitor was held back by the clone of the person with the mask of happiness from the fifth ocean. Zhu Yukai was fighting against the other three clones. When he turned his head around, a brilliant light shone in his eyes. When he lifted his right hand, a piercing purple light erupted from the life inequity spear in front of Su Ming. That light swept through the area, and booming sounds instantly reverberated in the air. Ring Wu's progenitor tumbled backwards. Once he was touched by the purple light, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Behind him, most of Virtue Rooter's progenitor's body instantly dissipated. As his flesh and blood turned into a bloody mess, his nascent divinity split up, and as he screamed, he retreated swiftly. The three Almighties in Mastery Realm, who followed behind Ring Wu's progenitor, looked as if their bodies were about to evaporate. Just as they were about to die and disappear, Ring Wu's progenitor pounced on them, and a large amount of blood fog erupted from their bodies with a bang. It swept the three of them back 10,000 feet. When they reappeared, they coughed up blood again. As for the other three, their bodies were riddled with holes. The four of them had clearly executed their full power to fight against Zhu Yukai's attack, but they still could not fight against it. In the end, they exploded into blood fog. Only when Ring Wu's progenitor added some of his race's strange power did they manage to withstand the attack, but they were still heavily injured. As for Virtue Rooter's progenitor, he retreated swiftly. When he was several thousands of feet away, his body shuddered, and his body was torn to pieces. His body and soul were destroyed. This was the power of a war immortal. The three clones who were fighting against Zhu Yukai also disappeared in front of Zhu Yukai like dust blown away by the wind in the life inequity spear's purple light. With a buzz, the life inequity spear appeared in Zhu Yukai's hand. He stood in front of Su Ming and swung the long spear. "With me here, who dares to come?" said Zhu Yukai coolly. His voice echoed out in all directions, causing silence to fill the area. As expected of an almighty in Life Realm, the Rung Wu progenitor wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth, and a strange light shone in his eyes. As he mumbled to himself, the eyes of the four true bodies of joy, anger, grief, and joy in the fifth sea shone at the same time. The four of them instantly took a step forward and charged towards Zhu Yukai. "Congratulations," the person with the mask of joy immediately said when he moved forward. His voice was ancient, but it was as powerful as thunder. As booming sounds shook the world, his mask melted. As it did so, it swiftly spread out and covered his entire body. Then, his body swiftly distorted and turned into a huge runic symbol in midair. That runic symbol exuded an ancient presence. If there was anyone who could understand the ancient language, then they would be able to tell from the runic symbol that it represented the source of all joy in the world. It was an ancient runic symbol that would make all those who saw it to be unable to help themselves, but feel joy rise in the depths of their hearts. When the runic symbol appeared, the galaxy was immediately surrounded by a thick wave of joy. When it spread out, a happy smile immediately appeared on the face of Flame Fiend's progenitor, but there was clearly fear in his eyes. At the same time, the Rung Wus also stopped moving. All of them had smiles on their faces. In fact, even the three heavily injured Almighties in Mastery Realm reacted the same way. Only three people did not react the same way. One of them was Zhu Yukai. His expression remained the same, and not a single hint of change could be detected on his face. The second was Rung Wu's progenitor. His expression was dark, and the space around him distorted. Clearly, he had used the power of the laws of fate to fight against the ancient runic symbol of joy. The last one was Su Ming. The gray-haired Su Ming was a controller of death. His thoughts were absolutely rational, and not a single emotion could appear in his mind. Even the runic symbol of joy from ancient times could not fuse into his mind in the slightest. He had his eyes closed and was still completely unaffected by what was happening in the world around him. But at the instant the runic symbol of joy appeared, the person with the mask of anger's body also melted. As his mask distorted, a second runic symbol appeared on his body. It was the runic symbol of anger. Once it appeared, the presence in the galaxy was forcefully changed. Once it turned from joy to anger, Flame Fiend's progenitor coughed up a mouthful of blood. When he fell back, his entire body was filled with anger. However, when this anger was compared to the even greater fear in his eyes, it turned into an indescribably bizarre sight. He was not the only one. The three Almighties in Mastery Realm and all the other Rung Wus reacted the same way. The change in their emotions was not due to their own will. It was forcefully changed by the power of the world, and it was the most damaging to their bodies. At the same time, the third runic symbol appeared with a bang. It was the symbol of grief, and the instant it appeared, the aura of the starry sky was distorted once again. This time, almost as soon as the distortions appeared, the fourth runic symbol appeared with a bang. It was the runic symbol of resentment. As it filled the galaxy with a powerful resentment, Flame Fiend's progenitor let out a shrill scream of pain. His body tumbled backwards with a bang until he landed on a shattered stone not too far away from Su Ming. Blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth, and chaos appeared in his eyes. He looked as if he had lost his will. His expression alternated between joy, anger, grief, and resentment. It was the same for the Rung Wus. In fact, as Rung Wus' progenitor shuddered, the space around him started distorting and changing. He brought out the power of the laws of fate to its extreme. However, a slight change still appeared on his expression. When the corners of his lips curled up, it was a sign of joy. From this, it could be seen that when the four great runic symbols of joy, anger, grief, and resentment appeared at the same time, the mighty pressure that descended had already surpassed that of an almighty in Fate Realm. At the same time, Zhu Yukai, who faced the four runic symbols head-on, had a solemn expression that had never appeared before on his face. He tightened his grip around the life inequity spear in his hand, and the four runic symbols charged towards him with a bang. They circled around him continuously, and the four runic symbols turned into a spinning whirlwind. As the whirlwind rotated, the people in black leather armor in the fifth ocean immediately sat down cross-legged. Their bodies instantly disappeared into the fog in the fifth ocean. As they disappeared and the whirlwind rotated, a loud bang surged into the sky from the fifth ocean. The entire fifth ocean started rotating at that moment to form a gigantic vortex. As it swept through the area with loud bangs, the waves shook the universe. Just at that moment, as the fifth sea rotated, the seawater mist gathered together to form a huge face. That face had a smile on it as it rose up from the fifth sea. It faced the heavens and the starry sky, and spoke a single word: joy. When it spoke, the whirlwind surrounding Zhu Yukai immediately let out a shocking roar. Anger, the voice spoke again. Sorrow, resentment. At the instant the gigantic face in the sea said those four words, its expression changed, and the whirlwind surrounding Zhu Yukai immediately let out a loud bang that shook the sky and earth. Zhu Yukai's face was dark, and there was a hint of paleness in it. As his body contorted, he lifted the life inequity spear in his right hand and thrust it downward. Life and death. Impermanence. As he mumbled, The long spear beneath him let out a bang, and black light erupted from it. That light swept through the area and crashed into the whirlwind and the 4 runic symbols. As the world roared under the people's gazes, the whirlwind's rotation came to a swift halt before it swiftly crumbled. The impact stirred up swept through the 5th ocean, and as the whirlwind crumbled, a ray of black light shot out. It turned into a long arc that charged towards the face in the 5th ocean. Booming sounds rose again. At the instant the face in the 5th ocean crashed into the long spear, it was torn to pieces. At the same time, the crumbling whirlwind scattered, and the 4 runic symbols were flung out. Once they turned into 4 figures in midair, they coughed up a mouthful of blood at the same time. They lifted their heads swiftly and looked at Zhu Yu Kai coldly. Zhu Yu Kai's face was pale. As he stood in midair, blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth. He staggered and fell to the ground, landing on a shattered stone beside Su Ming. At the instant he fell, he managed to gain his footing. When he lifted his right hand, black light flashed from the 5th ocean and returned to his hand. It turned into the life inequity spear, and he stabbed it into the shattered stone to support his body from falling. Endless cycle. A brilliant light shone in Zhu Yu Kai's eyes. He lifted his left hand and pointed at the center of Su Ming's brows. But at the instant the tip of his finger was about to touch the center of Su Ming's brows, the Rung Wus progenitor in the distance suddenly laughed loudly. He had waited for a long time, and he had finally obtained the Almighty in life realm to execute the endless cycle art. At the instant his laughter echoed in the air, a seemingly ordinary Rung Wus behind him lifted his head swiftly and took a step towards Zhu Yu Kai. He was so fast that he was like a bolt of lightning. When he took a step forward, his body rapidly withered, and in the span of a breath, he was reduced to skin and bones, making him look like a skeleton. At the instant he appeared beside Zhu Yu Kai, his body immediately crumbled into powder due to his speed. However, the powder formed a huge hand that went to seize Zhu Yu Kai's head. That hand also exuded a power that surpassed those in life realm. It belonged to those in death realm. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1132. Zhu Yu Kai's expression changed. He did not have time to dodge. At that moment, a freezing glare appeared in his eyes, but he did not dodge. Instead, he closed his eyes, and the power of his cultivation base erupted from his body to crash head-on into the incoming hand. With a bang, the hand shuddered. Zhu Yu Kai coughed up blood, and like a kite with its strings snapped, he crashed into the shattered stones in the distance with a bang. His entire body withered rapidly, and his fat body instantly turned into a skeleton. It was as if all his life force had been taken away by the hand at that instant. At that moment, the hand formed by the powder shone with a gentle light, and flesh and blood swiftly grew on it. Endless life, huh? Such nourishment is a small supplement for me. A hoarse voice echoed in the air, and a chilling glare suddenly shone in Zhu Yu Kai's eyes. The Tao of longevity. My will can be born, and my will can explode. Once he said those words, the old voice that echoed in the air immediately stopped. At the same time, the hand formed by the powder shuddered in midair, and the flesh and blood growing on it immediately exploded with a bang. At the instant it exploded, and a cold sneer appeared on Zhu Yu Kai's face. A furious roar echoed in the air. Tao of life, inequity. You're Hong Yu's descendant. You're his disciple. At the instant that voice appeared, Zhu Yu Kai's body suddenly started trembling. His eyes went wide as he stared at the crumbling hand. The only thing that echoed in his ears were the words spoken, Tao of life, inequity. What he executed was the Tao of longevity taught to him by his master, Hong Yu. As for life inequity, it was something he had said in his heart after he lost his lover. Yet right then, the strange existence from the Rung Wu clan had actually said that this art was the Tao of life inequity. The shock it brought to Zhu Yu Kai caused him to sink into a state of confusion. Within that confusion was also deep fear and the memories of what his master had done in the past. Kill him. We can't let him live. All those who cultivate the Tao of life, discord, must be exterminated. All of them must be exterminated. A crazed voice spread out in the void, and a large amount of black smoke came out of the hand before it immediately dissipated into the void. At the same time, the Rongwu ancestor of this generation charged toward Zhu Yukai. Zhu Yukai's body trembled, and his eyes were blank. Flame Fiend's progenitor stood on a shattered stone in the distance with a dull expression. He was already heavily injured. At the instant Rung Wu's progenitor closed in, the gray-haired Su Ming, who had been meditating and had not moved for 6 months, opened his eyes. At the instant he opened his eyes, the life inequity spear let out a buzzing sound and turned into a ray of black light that charged towards Su Ming. Once Su Ming got up, he grabbed it, and with a step forward, he stabbed Rung Wu's progenitor. "You overestimate yourself." Rung Wu's progenitor laughed coldly. He lifted his right hand and swung it at the incoming long spear. In his eyes, if this spear was in Zhu Yukai's hands, it could make him tremble, but in the hands of the person before him, it was like a useless weapon. With a swing of his hand, he could reduce this person to ashes. Without Zhu Yukai, the boy who had obtained the 5th stone was a piece of trash. He could not even withstand a single blow. Ring Wu's progenitor was incredibly confident, but at the instant his hand touched Su Ming's life inequity spear, he shuddered. A vast power that shocked him erupted from the life inequity spear. At the same time, as that power spread out, a layer of sand immediately spread out from the life inequity spear. As it spread out, it instantly turned into a sand palm in front of Rung Wu's progenitor. With a bang, it pressed down on the center of Rung Wu's progenitor's brows. The threat of death instantly rose in Rung Wu's progenitor's heart. His pupils shrank. In the midst of his terror, he fell back. At the same time, he let out a shrill call from the depths of his heart. "Ancestral spirits, protect me." When the sand palm touched Rung Wu's progenitor, his body was instantly torn to pieces with a bang. All of his laws of fate could not put up any sort of resistance before that palm. This was the difference between their realms. The suppression formed by this difference was something that Rung Wu's progenitor could not fight against. His entire body exploded, and at the instant his flesh and blood scattered in all directions, his ancestral spirits did not descend to protect him, because the hand formed by the powder just now was the ancestral spirit of Rung Wu race. The spirits of their ancestors' legacies might be powerful, but they had a fatal flaw. This flaw was something that even the 4 great true worlds could only guess. They did not know the specifics, but the 4 great guardians of the 5th ocean knew. Because of that, Dustburner's progenitor learned of it, and Su Ming also learned of everything that was carved into the jade slip. This flaw was that when the progenitor was at his strongest, he was outside his race. When he was at his weakest, he was outside his race. However, the ancestral spirits of Rung Wu race rarely ventured out, unless there was something that forced him to do so. For example, the 5th stone, which had an incredibly strong ripple of power that surpassed what it had in the past. But even so, it could only tempt him. It was still impossible for him to personally venture out, unless there was another almighty in life realm. The fatal flaw was that during the countless years of silence, the ancestral spirit of Rung Wu race had lost most of its power. In fact, it only had the most basic will and some of its deepest memories. That was why it needed to replenish its life force every once in a while, and the best way to do so was to devour and absorb an almighty in life realm. However, it was not that there were no almighties in life realm in Divine Essence Star Ocean, but most of them had already disappeared. Even if they did not disappear, they were like sand, Earthling's progenitor, and chose to remain in silence. If he tried to devour them forcefully, the effects would not be great. Instead, he would be tainted by the power of Culpa Realm. What he needed was a powerful almighty in life realm, but he could not go to the worlds beyond Divine Essence Star Ocean. After all, the source of those worlds was the Rongwu race. That was why the power of life realm that Zhu Yukai revealed immediately caused the ancestral spirit of Rongwu race to become incredibly greedy, which was why it had come to Su Ming. I fulfilled my promise to you. You must do what you promised me. Zhu Yukai closed his eyes. When he reopened them, the dazed look in his eyes was buried at the bottom of his heart. When he struggled to stand up from the shattered stones, he looked at Su Ming. You discovered a long time ago. Su Ming looked at Zhu Yukai. I didn't in the beginning, but everything that happened afterward allowed me to see some clues. You used me as bait to lure that person here. This must be the promise you made with the 4 people from the 5th ocean. When Zhu Yukai said those words flatly, the expression of Flame Fiend's progenitor in the distance returned to normal. His face was pale, and when he looked at Su Ming, the gray-haired Su Ming gave him a feeling that his schemes were unfathomable, and it terrified him. I am an abyss builder. Su Ming cast Zhu Yukai a glance and sent a divine thought to him. Once he said those words, a brilliant light shone in Zhu Yukai's eyes. After a long while, he nodded. Su Ming turned around and looked at the mast and 4 people floating in midair in the 5th ocean with an aloof expression. He lifted his right hand and patted his storage bag. Immediately, a jade slip appeared in his hand, and he flung it at the 4 people. Return this. The jade slip had been given to Su Ming by Dustburner's progenitor in the past. He had once said that the person with the jade slip could open the path to the 5th true world in this place without being disturbed. The person with the mask of happiness lifted his right hand and seized the air. The jade slip immediately charged into his hand. Once he held it, he squeezed it gently, and the jade slip was reduced to ashes. Sacrifice, the person with the mask of happiness said flatly. There are thousands of virtue rooters, nearly 1,000 ferocious beasts in this galaxy, several almighties, and, as Su Ming spoke calmly, shrill screams of pain came from behind him. The sand behind him swept outwards, and, as violent gusts of wind howled, the powerful existence from the sand spirit easily destroyed all the Rung Wus with his power. Even the 3 heavily injured almighties from the Rung Wus could not escape from this disaster. As the shrill screams echoed in the air, Su Ming's words continued spreading. There are also thousands of Rung Wus, 3 almighties in Mastery Realm, 1 almighty in Fate Realm, and the injured spirit of their ancestors. This is the sacrifice, the gray Su Ming said coldly. The 4 masked figures of joy, anger, grief, and resentment in the 5th sea were silent for a moment. Then, they waved their sleeves, and countless specks of light appeared in the area of slaughter. Within those specks of light were numerous discarnate souls. Shockingly, those discarnate souls were all of the people who had died in this place. With dazed expressions, they floated towards the 5th ocean. Once they fused into it, the 5th ocean tumbled about and expanded to an area of 10,000 feet before it returned to calm. The 4 of them turned around at that moment. Just as they were about to disappear and return to the depths of the 5th ocean to continue completing their mission and continue protecting the place, Su Ming suddenly spoke. I request that the remaining half a year be reduced to 1 day. When Su Ming said those words, the 4 people who were about to disappear froze. Sacrifice. The voice from the person with the mask of happiness traveled through the air again. Su Ming's long gray hair changed at that moment. In an instant, it turned crimson red, and a crazed look with the will to destroy appeared in his eyes. He lifted his right hand and pointed at the galaxy. Immediately, the galaxy roared, and the entire 5th ocean started tumbling about again. At the same time, a sea of fire appeared out of nowhere in the galaxy. As it tumbled and spread out, the outline of the 5th kiln appeared in the galaxy. Why don't the 4 of you say another sacrifice? The red-haired Su Ming's voice had a domineering tone to it. The disdain on his face caused the entire area to tremble. The gray Su Ming obeyed absolute rationality. He would pay the least price in order to obtain the greatest rewards. This was what it meant. But the red Su Ming was an arrogant, domineering, crazed, and destructive descender. Before this Su Ming, there was no reason, no principles. There was only killing intent that would explode at any moment. With the fifth kiln in his possession, he was an existence that could make even Zhu Yu Kai's pupils shrink. He was the strongest person in Divine Essence Star Ocean. Tomorrow, I will complete the fourth volume, and the fifth volume will be my Morning Tao world. It is about to begin, to be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1133. There was a powerful, domineering tone to Su Ming's voice. It was filled with madness and destruction. There was not a hint of rationality in it. There was only a madness that said, "If you turn against me, I will kill you." As his voice echoed in the air, the four masked people in the fifth ocean came to a halt. They turned around slowly, and their gazes instantly landed on the red-haired Su Ming. "As you wish." After a moment, the person with the mask of happiness said in a hoarse voice. He lifted his right hand and swung his arm. Immediately, the other three people beside him did the same. Immediately, wind rose and clouds surged in the fifth ocean. As the world roared, it was as if a monstrous wave had been stirred up. Once it devoured the four people, a piercing ray of light appeared in the tumbling galaxy above the fifth ocean. At first glance, that light was a glowing dot. Almost at the instant it appeared, another pillar of light shot out from the depths of the fifth ocean, which was the end of the pillar of light that had shot out from that spot. It charged towards the glowing dot above. Once they connected, the glowing dot shone brightly, and a third pillar of light shot out from within. Its direction was the fifth stone beside Su Ming. If the pillar of light was connected to the fifth stone, then there would be three pillars of light in the fifth ocean. They would be connected to each other and form a triangle. The triangle seemed to be a rune that would open the path to the fifth true world and send the possessor of the fifth stone into it. The flow of time seemed to have become faster at that moment. A day later, the pillar of light in the sky let out a bang. Once it shot through the endless space, it finally descended at the edge of the fifth ocean, right beside Su Ming, on the fifth stone that was shining with the same light. At the instant the pillar of light collided with the fifth stone, the triangle that looked like a formation immediately appeared above the fifth sea. As it did so, booming sounds echoed in all directions. The loud rumbles were deafening, and the fifth sea turned into a gigantic vortex that spun rapidly as the rumbles echoed. As it rotated, the triangle formed by the pillars of light was originally standing upright, but at that moment, it slowly laid flat. As it did so, a relocation power erupted from the fifth stone beside Su Ming. It instantly caused the universe to tremble, and the galaxy looked as if it was about to be torn apart. At this moment, if one looked down from above, the first thing they would see would be the vortex formed by the fifth sea. The vortex was circular, but within that circle was a triangle. These three corners were formed by the three beams of light, which were embedded into the vortex. They formed a complete spell formation. Su Ming was located on one of the points in the triangle. The sky there was covered by a powerful light at that moment. Under it, booming sounds surged into the sky, and the power of relocation was swiftly activated. The path to the fifth true world was opened because of the relocation. Boom! A power so great that it could make even the almighties in life, realm, apprehensive, erupted from a rune. When it rushed into the sky, it could be seen that the light that rushed out was also in the shape of a triangle, and it charged into the galaxy's void. Su Ming's body existed on one of the points. As the power of relocation charged into it, his body was instantly swept into the rune, and together with the pillar of light, he was pushed into the boundless void. Booming sounds shook the sky and earth. The pillar of light continued being pushed forward towards the galaxy above, as if it had turned into a pillar that was used to support the galaxy after it was torn apart. When the triangular pillar of light appeared, almost all the people in Divine Essence Star Ocean could see it. The statue of the first god of berserkers, Lai Shan Xiao, was located in Black Ink Planet. His statue had lifted its head, and no one knew whether it was a coincidence but it was the pillar of light that had appeared in divine essence star ocean at that moment. It was something that could be seen even from this place. It was a pillar of light that shot into the sky and led to the fifth true world. There was a pensive look on Lai Shan Xiu's statue's face. Su Ming's previous understanding had been something else, but if his current self could stand here and see this scene, then he would discover to his shock that his understanding in the past was not wrong. Instead, he had missed out on the deepest part of the meaning behind it. In Divine Essence Star Ocean was the place where the ninth tribe had been located in the past. It was the place where Tian Xiezi had lived for a long time, and it was now a wasteland. Tian Xiezi's statue that had been built there was also the direction where the pillar of light had risen. His gaze contained the same meaning that Su Ming had misunderstood in the past. But if he could see it with his own eyes, his heart would definitely tremble. The pillar of light lasted for about 3 months. During that time, it attracted far too many people's gazes. Some of them did not understand it, and some of them understood it. Time passed. 1 year, another year. Flame Fiend's progenitor continued waiting outside the fifth ocean. He stared at the fifth ocean, which had long since calmed down, and at the space where the pillar of light had disappeared. Vaguely, he felt as if he could still see Su Ming's figure in the past. When the 10th year arrived, Flame Fiend's progenitor sighed and chose to leave. Even though Su Ming had yet to release the seal on his body, all of this was no longer important to Flame Fiend's progenitor. He felt a slight reluctance to part with Su Ming. It was as if his hostility towards Su Ming had turned into wariness after the series of interactions they had with each other. Then it turned into an inexplicable trust, and right then, it turned into a form of nostalgia. With this nostalgia, he left the fifth ocean and moved through the galaxy. He returned to his homeland, the burning planet, and continued becoming the progenitor his people worshipped. However, when it was dark and quiet, he would lift his head to stare at the dazzling galaxy. In his head, all the things that had happened during that period of time, when he was in the fifth kiln and at the edge of the fifth ocean, would appear. He will come back. Flame Fiend's progenitor closed his eyes. His body fused with the magma, and he turned into a statue once again. He fell asleep and did not move. On the 72nd year after Flame Fiend's progenitor left, Zhu Yukai also chose to leave the edge of the fifth ocean. Even though Su Ming had yet to tell him how to resurrect his wife, the words Abyss Builders had already given Zhu Yukai endless hope. Even though he had been thinking about the differences and similarities between his master's Tao of longevity and his Tao of inequity in his heart during the 70-something years, even though this sort of contemplation caused his heart to ache in pain and made him increasingly agitated, he still persisted in believing that Su Ming would come back. When he came back, he would tell him how to resurrect his wife. With this determination, Zhu Yukai left quietly and returned to the mountain. He rested in his cave and listened to a woman's soft moans coming faintly from the top of the mountain. He closed his eyes, and tears fell from them. He still held a medicinal core in his hand. 100 years had passed in Divine Essence Star Ocean. Everything had long since returned to peace. Many people no longer paid attention to the things that had happened 100 years ago. The eternity of the sun, moon, and stars, and the changes in the world were always a continuous dream. After one dream, another would come. However, there were still some people who remembered that 100 years ago, there was a cultivator who stirred up a storm that caused the entire Divine Essence Star Ocean to tremble. Su Wei had long since met up with the 9 old frail darknesses. They rode on the warship and brought with them 3,000 fearless warriors, as well as the people from Morning Tao sect who belonged to Tao Kong. They left Divine Essence Star Ocean and returned to the region where true Morning Tao World was stationed to keep a lookout over Divine Essence Star Ocean. Over there, they waited quietly for the day Su Ming would return. Xianshang was still struggling in the fifth kiln. He could not find a way out. Djiao and Mo Sha was still fighting against the other races for the continuation of his tribe, also that he could find a place for his tribe to stay in for a long period of time. Everything continued. Without Su Ming, Divine Essence Star Ocean remained the same as before. This gigantic planet would never tilt because of a single person's will, and neither would it change because there was one less person in the universe. The glory of the past, the heaven-defying rise, the endless catastrophes, all of these were like fleeting clouds. They were either remembered or forgotten. Compared to this eternal starry sky, these insignificant lives were still so insignificant. However, the legend regarding Su Ming was slowly remembered by many people even though he did not have a name. There was a period of time in the past when there was such a person in divine essence Star Ocean. He was a brilliant sun that reached 100,000 feet, but he only appeared for a brief moment. From the barren lands to Western Ring Nebula, from the foreign lands to black ink, from divine essence Star Ocean to the kiln, from divine essence Star Ocean to the fifth ocean. Su Ming left behind a legend as he walked. When Su Ming woke up, he saw a dazzling galaxy. It was incredibly unfamiliar, and it did not belong to divine essence Star Ocean. It was dead silent. Not a single sound could be heard, and it was so quiet that it was terrifying. From the distance, the galaxy was not empty. There were plenty of shattered stones floating in it, and it was a mess, as if a war had once ravaged this place for all eternity. What was left behind were the wreckage of war. All of this was exactly the same as the impression Su Ming had of the fifth true world based on the other people's words and his own analysis. All of this was exactly the same as his guesses and how the fifth true world should have existed in his mind. There was no difference, and there was not a single hint of difference. It was as if Su Ming had come here before. Once he saw it, he would find it unfamiliar at first glance, but when he cast it a second glance, he found it familiar. This familiarity came from the influence he had on the fifth true world in his mind. It was just like how a person would imagine their future lover in their mind, and when they truly saw them, they would discover that they or he would look like this. Su Ming fell silent. He stared at the fifth true world before him, and a glint appeared in his eyes. He charged into the distance, and when he lifted his right hand, a jade slip appeared on his palm. The first was even better. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Start Point and cast a recommendation vote or a monthly vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1134. The jade slip had been given to him by Dustburner's progenitor in the past. Some of the regions in the fifth true world were marked in it, and Su Ming had already memorized it. As he walked, he saw a white river after about a few days. The fifth Abyss River. Su Ming's footsteps came to a halt. He looked at the Abyss River that looked as if it had cut through the galaxy, and at the two ends of the Abyss River were two gigantic holes in space. The two gigantic holes connected to an unknown place. They existed in the galaxy, and in the middle was the flowing white Abyss River. They were like two empty eyes. When Su Ming first saw the jade slip related to the fifth true world from Dustburner's progenitor, he saw a simple drawing of the fifth Abyss River, but in his mind at that time, the fifth Abyss River should have been white, because white represented the will of Abyss. It was not death, but a form formed by the will of Abyss. At that moment, Su Ming saw the fifth Abyss River. He noticed that the river was exactly the same as what he had imagined. The holes that looked like eyes connected the two ends of the Abyss River were also the same as what Su Ming had imagined. There is a planet by the fifth Abyss River called Burning Dust. Su Ming mumbled. This was the drawing on the map in the jade slip. When he lifted his head, he moved and headed towards the fifth Abyss River. The closer he got, the stronger the presence of death became. Su Ming saw corpses floating in the fifth Abyss River. When he left, his footsteps suddenly came to a halt. When he turned his head around, he looked at the fifth Abyss River. He had a vague feeling that something was off, but he could not immediately figure out what it was that gave him that feeling. In silence, Su Ming spoke softly. Bald crane. He called out to the bald crane in his storage bag, but there was no response. With a frown, Su Ming fused his gaze into his storage bag, and he saw that the bald crane was not inside. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. The feeling that something was off became stronger. After a moment of pensive silence, he chose to leave. When Su Ming left, the numerous corpses in the Fifth Abyss River continued floating, but all of them looked as if they were lying in the river. Su Ming could only see their backs, not their faces. Su Ming had no idea how much time had passed as he walked through the galaxy. As time passed, he seemed to have forgotten about everything in the fifth true world. Then he saw a planet in the galaxy in the distance. That was a burning star. Thick flames spread out, causing the star to be immersed in a sea of flames. Its color was crimson. This planet was the birthplace of the fire spirits, which Dustburner's progenitor had mentioned. Su Ming looked at the planet, and the feeling that something was off became stronger in his heart once again, but he still could not find the reason behind it. He immediately became alert, but even then, he could not find any hint of danger. From start to finish, he was the only person in this starry sky. He did not see the existence of a second life. Su Ming fell silent. With hesitation, he walked towards Burning Dust Planet, which was located in the Sea of Fire. He walked past it, and when he stepped on the planet, he spread his divine sense outwards, but he still did not find any signs of life on the planet. The ground was a desert. It was a land of sand burning in a sea of fire. The sky was crimson red, and it was filled with flames. The entire planet had no rivers, no trees. It was only sand. Su Ming grabbed a handful of burning earth from within and placed it into his storage bag. He cast a scrutinizing glance at Burning Dust Planet before turning around quietly and leaving. Su Ming walked through the fifth true world, which was devoid of life. He was the only person in the world and the entire universe. The silence around him gradually turned into a suffocating air, causing Su Ming to feel as if there was an oppressive feeling in his heart that he could not vent. However, to him, all of this seemed to be how it should be. The fifth true world should have been in existence without any life. It should have been a dead universe. The destruction and wreckage here were exactly the same as what he had imagined them to be. They were exactly the same. Time passed. Year after year passed, and Su Ming continued charging through the galaxy. He only had one goal, and that was to go to an incredibly distant planet marked on the map. It was a planet known as Abyss Builders. That place was Abyss Builders' homeland. It was also their race's holy land. In the past, Abyss Builders' progenitor had stayed in Abyss Builders' planet. Time passed by quietly. One day, when Su Ming felt that he was about to reach the planet, he saw an aqua-blue cultivation planet in the galaxy ahead of him. That color was incredibly unique in the galaxy, and it was something that no one would ever forget once they saw it. Abyss Builders' planet. Su Ming stared at the blue planet, and a shudder ran through his body. In silence, he walked closer to it, and when he stepped into the world of the planet, he saw that the ground was a wasteland. Only the color of the seawater was blue. Waves tumbled about, and it was quiet. Even the sound of the waves seemed to have been isolated. The ground was covered in ruins. Shattered stones filled the air, and Su Ming could vaguely see that there had once been plenty of cities in this place, but now they had all been reduced to ruins. There were no mountains that were too tall. There were only signs of cracks, as if they bore witness to the war that shook the entire fifth true world that had happened here in the past. While in midair, Su Ming looked at the ground and the wreckage. He walked over in silence and walked past the ruins of numerous cities until he arrived at the center of the planet. There was an island in the middle of the sea, and on it was a gigantic palace that had mostly collapsed. There should have been plenty of statues erected in the field outside the palace, but now there were only 3 left. 2 of them no longer had their heads. Clearly, they had been destroyed during the war in the past. Only one statue remained intact, and it was the statue of a woman. Su Ming stared at the statue. It was his mother, the woman who was currently lying in the coffin and absorbing life force to maintain her life in the 5th kiln. This was her statue. Judging from the positions of the remaining 2 statues, the one in the middle should be the most important person in the group. Even though it did not have a head, it could be imagined that this statue should belong to the progenitor of Abyss Builders. Beside it was Su Ming's mother, and the other. Su Ming looked at it with a complicated gaze. The statue without a head was as indistinct and unclear as Su Ming's father's appearance. Su Ming remained silent for a long time. He turned around and walked through practically all the spots on the Abyss Builder's planet. Several days later, when he returned to the planet, he sat down cross-legged in front of his mother's statue. He sat there quietly and looked at the statue, then at his surroundings, sinking into a pensive state. Time trickled by. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Su Ming continued sitting cross-legged and did not move. However, as time passed, a brilliant, dark light gathered in his eyes, and he gradually closed them. As time passed, in the core of Divine Essence Star Ocean was the fifth ocean. In the deepest part of the fifth ocean that could not be seen from the outside world was a gigantic altar. As the fog tumbled about, there was a gigantic altar. There was a gigantic mirror placed on the altar. It was aqua blue and crystalline, exuding waves of mighty pressure. It spread out as if it was suppressing the entire fifth ocean, causing the fog in the area to tumble about. Once it reached a certain level, it was forced to calm down. At that moment, the four people with the masks of happiness, anger, grief, and resentment sat around the gigantic mirror. None of them had their eyes closed, but were staring at the crystal-like mirror. After a long while, the person with the mask of grief lowered his head and sighed softly. At that moment, there was no longer aloofness in his eyes, but a complicated look. Can't bear it anymore. As the sigh echoed in the air, the person with the mask of anger turned his head around and spoke in a low voice. There was a mighty air to his voice, along with a domineering air that made it seem as if he was looking down on the entire world. I indeed can't bear it anymore, and it's the same for you. The person with the mask of grief said faintly and cast a glance at the person with the mask of anger. The person with the mask of anger lowered his head in silence. After a long while, he let out a long sigh and mumbled under his breath, "Perhaps I was wrong in the past. From a moment we gave up on our identities in arid triad expanse cosmos and became the guardians of Dark Dawn Ocean. We drew a line between ourselves and our past. We cut off all ties with all our emotions. This is just the first test in Dark Dawn Ocean. If he can't even see through this place, then he is not the person needed by the 180 expanse cosmoses of Dark Dawn." A low voice swiftly came from the person with the mask of happiness. You mentioned in the past that besides the 4 great legacies of happiness, anger, grief, and resentment, there is in truth another legacy. The guardians of Dark Dawn Ocean should also be 5 people. Was the 5th person? Sang's hoarse voice tumbled out of the mouth of the person with a mask of resentment, who had not spoken since the start. The 5th legacy of happiness, anger, grief, and resentment. There is no emotion in it. It is the mask of despair, which dispels all emotions and desires. The person with the mask of happiness said faintly, "I have a question as well. The 3 of us have had many legacies, and you once said that only one generation of the legacy of happiness exists. I'm very curious. Just who were you in arid triad expanse cosmos in the past?" The person with the mask of grief immediately asked, "When the time comes for the 3 of you to know, you will naturally understand everything." The person with the mask of happiness said calmly. The 3 people with the masks of anger, grief, and resentment fell silent when they heard his words, but all of them looked at the person with the mask of happiness with a strange gaze. At that moment, the crystal mirror the 4 of them surrounded suddenly became chaotic. Clouds and fog surrounded it, and as if a storm had stirred up, it started tumbling about. Buzzing sounds echoed in the air, causing the 3 people with the masks of anger, grief, and resentment to immediately look over. Only the person with the mask of happiness remained as aloof as ever. The second was even worse. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1135. At the instant the 3 of them looked towards the crystal mirror, Su Ming, who had been meditating for nearly 100 years on Abyss Builder Planet in the 5th True World, opened his eyes. There was calmness in his eyes. As he stared at his mother's statue before him, he sighed softly. I can only see my mother's statue here because I've seen my mother before. I've never seen Su Xian Yi, which is why his statue is headless. I've never seen Abyss Builder's progenitor either, which is why his statue is also headless. Su Ming stood up and looked at the entire Abyss Builder planet. This planet is exactly the same as what I imagined it to be. This expanse cosmos is also exactly the same as what I imagined it to be. Su Ming shook his head. He took a step into the air, and in an instant, he appeared in the galaxy. In the past, I imagined that this planet should be near, which was why Abyss Builder Planet appeared. Now, I think that the fifth Abyss River should be in front of me. As Su Ming mumbled, he lowered his head, and when he lifted it again, the fifth Abyss River appeared in front of him. He saw the corpses in the river. Only their backs could be seen, not their faces. This is because even in my imagination, I've never seen all of you before. That's why I can't imagine all of your different appearances. Su Ming shook his head and walked towards the galaxy. I might not want to believe it, but 100 years ago, at the moment I saw the statue, I guessed that this isn't the fifth true world and Abyss Builder Planet isn't here either. The true fifth true world isn't here. What a lie, what a lie. A fierce glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes. At the instant Su Ming said those words, the galaxy around him suddenly shuddered. All the shattered stones in it disappeared, and all the dust disappeared without a trace. The entire space distorted and turned into an arc. That arc was formed after the entire galaxy was distorted. It rotated slowly in front of Su Ming, and when it turned to face him, his heart trembled with a bang. This was because he saw that after the starry sky warped, what appeared in front of him was shockingly an enormous mask. The white Nether River was a line between the eyes on a mask. The two voids on both sides of the Nether River had been like eyes in the past, but now they were the hollow eyes of the mask. Su Ming would never forget that mask. It was the mask of extinction that he had been forced to wear on his face when he was in Death Region. It was the mask that cut off his emotions and desires. Due to the mask, Su Ming had come to divine essence Star Ocean. Right then, after 1,000-something years, he saw the mask again, and an epiphany rose swiftly in his heart. Searching for your king in the past was just like the rumors in the world outside, saying that this is the entrance to the fifth true world. It was all a lie. This scam didn't just deceive me, it also deceived the first god of berserkers, Lai Shan Xiao. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, he had completely understood everything. This is a legacy, just like the four masked people of the Fifth Ocean's Guardians. If my guess is correct, there were originally not four masked people here, but five. And after happiness, anger, grief, and resentment is the mask of extinction that cuts off all emotions and desires. From a moment you asked me to wear the mask and come to divine essence Star Ocean, you didn't ask me to search for your king. Neither did you ask me to search for the entrance to the fifth true world. You asked me to become the fifth envoy of this place. I also understand why Lai Shan Xiao's statue had such a complicated and dazed expression in the past, because he might have already noticed some clues at that time, but in the end, he still stepped into your scam. One of the four masked people is Lai Shan Xiao. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, his epiphany caused his mind to instantly become clear. Su Ming's heart trembled because he remembered his master, Tian Xiezi. He was almost certain that if Tian Xiezi was still alive, then one of the four masked people would definitely be Tian Xiezi. It did not matter whether it was Lai Shan Xiao, Tian Xiezi, or Su Ming. All three of them had one similarity, and that was all three of them came from Death Region. If Su Ming looked at it that way, then what caused his heart to tremble again was who would be the third and fourth person among the four. Wear this mask and become the fifth great envoy of Dark Dawn Ocean. The bearer of the mask of extinction will know everything you want to know. You will know all the secrets regarding Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos, the fifth true world, and the Abyss Builders. Become the envoy of extinction, and you will no longer have any worries or doubts. You will be given eternal life. This is your fate, and you cannot fight against it. From the moment you put on the mask and were sent into divine essence star ocean, the path of your life was already decided. No matter how you change it, you will still not be able to escape. Your fate is to become the bearer of the mask of extinction in dark dawn ocean. An ancient voice with an aloofness and supreme, mighty pressure tumbled out of the mouth of the gigantic galaxy mask with loud rumbles. There was no way Su Ming could forget that voice. It belonged to the ancient will that had threatened his senior brother's lives in Death region all those years ago and forced him to put on the mask. You cannot refuse. You cannot refuse. You do not have the right to refuse. You are the chosen. You are my envoy of extinction. His voice reverberated in the air. When it shook space, the mask formed by the gigantic galaxy swiftly enveloped Su Ming with a loud bang. A powerful, mighty pressure swiftly gathered on Su Ming's body, causing him to be unable to move even a single inch. However, at the instant it descended and Su Ming sensed that he could not move, his cultivation-based clone, which was Dao Kong's original body, suddenly spread out, a power that allowed him to instantly regain mobility. More accurately speaking, that power was not power, but a presence. That presence was long and drawn out, and it also contained a supreme will. It fought against the incoming mask with a bang. Su Ming could sense that presence. It came from true morning Dao world. It was the power of Kismet. This was the Kismet of all of true morning Dao world. It was forcefully interfering with everything, because Dao Kong's body was the body that true morning Dao world's Kismet doted on, and right then, it was clear that there was a power from the world beyond clashing violently against that Kismet. Su Xian, even if you have predicted everything and intentionally delivered this physical body to this child so that he would possess Kismet, I have predicted this a long time ago. There is no way I will let you succeed. As the mask charged forward, its ancient and cold voice echoed in the air with loud rumbles. At the instant that voice echoed in the air, the gigantic mask turned around and had its back turned towards Su Ming. Countless white threads crawled out from within. As they squirmed about, they spread out, looking incredibly terrifying. The white threads intersected with each other to form a gigantic face. There was an ancient air to that face, and its expression was apathetic, as if it was just a piece of human skin. It was filled with white threads, and when it charged towards Su Ming, it crashed into the invisible Kismet. Booming sounds reverberated in the air, and the ancient voice from the mask spread out. To deal with your morning Dao world's Kismet, I have prepared for tens of thousands of years and gathered the face of misfortune of true morning Dao world to break the Kismet you brought here. Scatter. When he said those words, booming sounds shook the sky and earth. The space around him trembled, and the morning Dao world's Kismet that came from Su Ming's cultivation base clone immediately tumbled away and crumbled. Without morning Dao world's Kismet, the face formed by the threads scattered and turned into countless squirming threads again. At the instant they charged towards Su Ming, the mask formed by the galaxy swiftly shrank. But at the instant it closed in on Su Ming, Ikang's presence erupted from his body with a bang, and Ikang's body appeared behind him. Puny Ikang, if you were at the peak of your strength, you would still have some strength. After all, you are the life in the old man's ballad, but now shatter. The cold voice echoed in the air again. With a bang, Su Ming's entire body was covered in blood, and Ikang's body behind him shattered to pieces. This is your fate, a fate you cannot avoid. You are my envoy of extermination. As the cold voice spoke, the mask formed by the galaxy shrank continuously until it returned to its normal size. In an instant, it enveloped Su Ming's face, and countless white threads crawled madly into his skin and flesh. They connected tightly with his flesh and blood, intending to forcefully put the mask back on his body. From now on, you will no longer have a name. You will only have one title, and it will be Extermination. As the old man's voice echoed in the air, Su Ming shuddered. The mask enveloped his face, and intense pain filled his entire body. Madness appeared in his eyes. Black stone fragment, seed of life extermination. Remove this mask and find its flaws. As Su Ming roared in his heart, the seed of life extermination in his soul shone with a powerful light. That light instantly spread out from Su Ming's soul, seeped through his body, and erupted from within him. That light was made up of 9 colors intersecting with each other. Once Su Ming's body was enveloped by it, it was as if another figure had appeared on his body. It was an old man dressed in a white robe, and he was an existence in the universe that stood above all lives. It was the Old Man Extermination. However, in the Old Man Extermination's eyes was Su Ming's madness. He slowly lifted his right hand and pushed it against the mask on his face. At the instant his right hand touched the mask, it let out a piercing, shrill scream of pain, as if it had gained life. As it screamed, it changed rapidly under Su Ming's right hand, as if all the structures within it were being disintegrated. It was also at this moment that the ancient voice that came from both the mask and the void revealed a tone of astonishment for the first time, and it rapidly reverberated in the air. This is the Old Man Extermination. You are this generation's extermination. This is impossible. This is... For the first time, there was panic in the voice, and there was shock in it that had never been heard before. As it echoed in the air, the mask Su Ming's right hand touched immediately melted. As the layers disappeared, Su Ming's face was revealed. A loud bang rang out, and at the instant the mask disappeared, the space in the area crumbled. Layer by layer, everything in the area shattered, and as it did, the old man let out a roar filled with unwillingness to accept his fate. Dark Mountain, Xiaohong Fragment, Seed of Life, Extermination. Su Xian Yi, so this is your counterattack. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Boom! The space completely crumbled to reveal the 5th ocean, along with the blue crystal mirror that had been reduced to fragments that swept through the area. There was also the strongest storm that swept through the entire 5th ocean in a violent manner. The 4th volume, Rise of Divine Essence, had ended. From tomorrow onwards, the 5th volume, My Morning Tao World, will be revealed. Please give me monthly votes. Please give me recommendation tickets during midnight. There will be individual chapters at midnight, and there will be spoilers in them. The more monthly votes you have, the more tempting the spoilers will be. Please give me a guaranteed monthly vote. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Starting Point to give me recommendation tickets and monthly votes. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1136. When Su Ming saw Flame Fiend's progenitor reacting this way, he laughed wryly in his heart and intentionally put on an aloof expression before letting out a cold harumph. When Flame Fiend's progenitor heard it and saw Su Ming's icy expression, he immediately felt that everything was normal. Just as he was about to say something, Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed at him. Flame Fiend's progenitor immediately shuddered. Gradually, a large amount of sweat broke out on his body. It was black, and once it seeped out of his body, it swiftly gathered together to turn into a water droplet that was the size of a fist and exuded a foul stench. Once it disappeared before Flame Fiend's progenitor, an incredibly relaxed feeling rose in his heart. The seal has been broken. Huokawei, don't go to the 5th kiln anymore. If fate wills it, we will meet again in the future. Farewell. Su Ming cast a glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor again. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, his footsteps suddenly came to a halt. When he turned his head around, he asked, "Where does Zhu Yukai live?" "In Husband Gazing Mountain," Flame Fiend's progenitor quickly answered. At that moment, the excitement he felt when he saw Su Ming had already disappeared. The wariness he felt towards Su Ming 100 years ago, along with the strong impression he had of him, rose in his mind once more. Su Ming nodded and cast a glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor. When he saw the cautious look on his face, a hint of a smile slowly appeared at the corners of his lips. However, he did not know that when Flame Fiend's progenitor saw it, his heart immediately let out a thump against his chest, and terror instantly filled his heart. What's going on? This guy who kills without batting an eyelid, is ruthless and calculative, actually smiled? Something's off, something's really off. Flame Fiend's progenitor became even more cautious, and he instinctively took a few steps back. I want to return a true morning Dao world. Come with me, Su Ming said flatly. He turned around and no longer bothered about whether Flame Fiend's progenitor was conflicted or not. He walked towards the galaxy. By his side, the bald crane let out a fake cough and cast a profound glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor. This is very important. Huokawei, you have to think about this carefully. Haha. In the end, the bald crane even tried to scare him. It felt that its current state was the most wonderful state it had ever been in its life. While it tried to scare him, it did not forget to let out a few harumphs. Flame Fiend's progenitor was instantly conflicted. He watched Su Ming leave into the distance, then heard the bald crane's threatening voice. He turned his head around to look at Flame Fiend's planet behind him, and hesitation filled his heart. He was not worried about his people. With the Flame Fiend's divine abilities, even if he was not around, nothing major would happen in Divine Essence Star Ocean. Instead, if he followed Su Ming, he might be able to obtain a great serendipity. When Flame Fiend's progenitor remembered Su Ming's actions on the way 100 years ago, it immediately gave him confidence. He gritted his teeth, and determination appeared on his face. Flame Fiend's progenitor immediately turned his head around and roared at Flame Fiend Star. If I follow a scheming person like him, at the very least, I won't be at a disadvantage in front of outsiders. Immediately, Flame Fiend's planet descended into chaos. Countless Flame Fiends flew up and looked at their progenitor in the galaxy. There was reluctance in their eyes, but they still knelt down to worship him. Flame Fiend's progenitor let out a few more shouts, a clear sign that he was giving orders to his people after he left. Then, under his people's reluctant gazes, he turned his head around and turned into a ball of purple flames that charged forward in the direction Su Ming had left. Husband Gazing Mountain was a mountain that seemed to exist eternally in the galaxy. Murmurs traveled from the top of the mountain all year round. As the beautiful legends about the mountain spread, the murmurs would always stir up the curiosity of those who came to the mountain. At that moment, Su Ming stood on a big rock that protruded out from the center of the mountain. Beside him were the bald crane and Flame Fiend's progenitor. Before him was a dark mountain cave. "Greetings, Senior Changhe," Su Ming said calmly as he wrapped his fist in his palm towards the mountain cave. The mountain cave was quiet. After a long while, a muffled bang came from within, and an incredibly plump, ferocious, and ugly figure slowly walked out of the mountain cave to appear before Su Ming's eyes. Zhu Yukai. His eyes were bloodshot. When he walked out, he stared at Su Ming. There was struggle and madness in his eyes. After some time, his expression slowly calmed down. He sat down limply by the side, and when he lifted his head to look at Su Ming, his expression had already returned to normal. "You're back," he said faintly. Su Ming nodded. "Thank you for helping me in the Fifth Ocean in the past, Senior. About your wife." When Su Ming said these words, he paused for a moment. Zhu Yukai's expression was calm. His gaze landed on Su Ming's face as he waited for him to continue. "When my level of cultivation is high enough and I can activate my own abyssal world, I will definitely revive her," Su Ming said slowly. He did not have a lot of understanding toward abyss builders, but he had a general idea that they had an inborn ability that allowed them to revive the dead. However, the prerequisite for this sort of revival was that they had to activate their own abyssal world. Su Ming did not know the specifics, and neither did the Duke of Crimson Flame. However, Su Ming believed that as his level of cultivation increased, there would come a day when he would understand his race's inborn ability. "Before that, if you trust me, I can open the fifth kiln and have your wife's soul fuse into it so that she can receive its nourishment. This will ensure that her soul will not disappear during this period of time." With sincerity on his face, Su Ming bowed towards Zhu Yukai. Zhu Yukai was silent. After a long while, He stood up and lifted his head to look at the summit. After some time, Zhu Kai asked calmly, "Have you heard of the legend of this mountain?" "I've heard of it." Su Ming nodded. In the past, the woman waited for her husband's return on this mountain. As time passed, she never saw him return. Then, her body turned into a rock, and the presence of her longing turned into this mountain. In the past, when I was in the fifth kiln, I thought that I had already died, and I was determined to die, but when I died, I woke up again. However, when I woke up, I was here, and my body was in this state. I don't know the answer to all of this, but I can sense that there is another person in this body of mine. This person coexists with me. His name is Zhu Kai. He looked at the summit, and his voice echoed in the area. "Do you want to go to the summit and see the woman who has turned into a rock?" Zhu Kai turned into a long arc that charged towards the summit. Su Ming watched Zhu Kai leave into the distance. Even though the legend he spoke of did not quite match with what he had heard, Su Ming still chose to turn into a long arc and head to the summit. When the bald crane arrived at the mountain, its expression became slightly gloomy. At that moment, it stared at the mountain cave with a blank look on its face. In silence, it followed behind Su Ming and headed to the summit. The summit of the mountain was not a place a normal person could enter, but it was different for Zhu Kai and Su Ming. They did not spend too much time before they arrived at the top of the mountain. Su Ming saw a stone golem at the top of the mountain. Based on its appearance, it should be a woman. She stood at the summit and stared into the distance. No one knew what she was looking at. Zhu Kai stared at the statue, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Perhaps it was not as he had said. He did not know why he had woken up in this place after he died. Perhaps he knew the reason, but he did not want to say it. It was his secret. Behind Su Ming, the bald crane shuddered. Grief appeared in its eyes as it stared at the statue. As it stared at it, it felt as if it was immersed in eternity. This was something that could not be seen on normal days. "Why do I feel so uncomfortable? It's like my body is about to disappear," the bald crane mumbled. At that moment, a few scenes rose in its head. Those scenes were blurry, but vaguely, there seemed to be a woman in them with her back turned towards it. She was like a statue as she stared at the galaxy in the distance. The bald crane could only watch her from behind and hide its emotions, not wanting to reveal them. Then, one day, when the woman cried while staring at the galaxy, the bald crane heard itself murmuring. "So what if its arid triadic spans cosmos? So what if my soul disperses? I will help you find him." The voice echoed in the bald crane's head. As it listened to it, it could hear the anguish in its voice. The bald crane's vision became blurry. The scenes in its head shattered into pieces, and they swept it away, making it feel uncomfortable and sad. "This means that before you have enough power to activate your own abyssal world, I will have to stay by your side to protect you." After a long while, Zhu Kai averted his gaze from the stone person and turned his head around to look at Su Ming. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he met Zhu Kai's gaze. "You can understand it that way. I don't need the fifth kiln's nourishment. With my level of cultivation, I will constantly ensure that her soul does not disappear." Zhu Kai closed his eyes. When he opened them again, a hint of fatigue appeared on his face. "Then, if you don't keep your promise and revive her, I will make you feel the same pain," Zhu Kai said calmly. He lifted his foot and took a step forward into the galaxy. "Unless I die, I will not go back on my word," Su Ming said clearly. As he took a step forward, he was about to leave into the distance when he suddenly noticed something. He turned his head around to cast a glance at the bald crane, and a pensive look appeared on his face before he left into the distant galaxy. Su Ming was in front, and the bald crane was by his side. Occasionally, it would turn its head back to look at the mountain. Behind them were Zhu Kai and Flame Fiend's progenitor. The strange expression on the bald crane's face also attracted Zhu Kai's attention, but he did not say anything. He also had a pensive look on his face. As the group charged forward, they left the periphery of Divine Essence Star Ocean and moved past Black Ink Planet to step into Western Ring Nebula. Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. At the instant Su Ming stepped into Western Ring Nebula, a brilliant light shone in his eyes. Before he left the barren lands of divine essence, his final stop would be Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. Over there, it would also be time for his Ikang clone to devour the other Ikang souls. Once he succeeded, Su Ming's level of cultivation would immediately increase by a large margin. Because of it, when he returned to true Morning Dao World, he would be able to stir up the disaster in true Morning Dao World. Ask for recommendation votes. Chapter 1137. The windstorm spread out with a bang from the blue crystal mirror, so much so that the mirror could not withstand it. It was torn to pieces and turned into countless shards that swept through the area. Due to the mirror's collapse, the entire fifth ocean looked as if there was no longer anything suppressing it, which was why when the impact spread out, the rampaging ocean let out violent booms. In the mid of those booms, the entire fifth ocean tumbled about madly. A large amount of fog tumbled about, but when it was touched by the impact, it immediately shattered layer by layer, as if it had evaporated. If anyone looked from above the fifth ocean, they would be able to clearly see that as the fifth ocean tumbled about, a circular ring of light was formed by the impact. As it spread out with loud, booming sounds, it looked as if it was about to cause the sky and earth to shatter. After a moment, the entire fifth ocean continuously evaporated due to the impact. The booming sounds it formed reverberated through the inner region of Divine Essence Star Ocean, and the vast and endless seawater started showing signs of disappearing. As the mirror shattered into pieces, the four people wearing the masks of joy, anger, grief, and resentment also disappeared. The four of them quickly retreated, and at that moment, the masks on their faces gave off waves of ghostly light that covered their bodies, causing them to instantly disappear without a trace. Perhaps leaving like this was not their original intention, but the light from the masks circling in the air and the fifth ocean's roars turned into a power that they could not refuse, and it forcefully interfered with the progress of the situation. The booming sounds continued. The fifth ocean roared as it tumbled about and gradually evaporated, gradually disappearing from the core of Divine Essence Star Ocean for all eternity. The entire universe, the spot where the fifth ocean originally existed, was surrounded by thick fog at that moment. From then on, the fifth ocean would become a world filled with thick fog. Several days later, when the booming sounds in the place gradually became weaker, a figure slowly appeared in the fog from the distance. That figure took one step at a time, and when he walked out of the fog, gray light immediately spread out. It was the gray Su Ming. By Su Ming's side was the bald crane, which had a sleazy look on its face and was a stark contrast to the gray Su Ming. Su Ming had not seen the crane when he was in the fake fifth true world, but once he walked out, it appeared on its own. Clearly, all of this was related to the falseness of the fifth true world. At that moment, it was following behind Su Ming with its head held high. Su Ming's expression was dark. When he walked out of the fog, he turned his head around and cast a glance behind him. The fifth ocean in the past had already changed beyond recognition. One of the four great masks of happiness, anger, grief, and resentment must be Master Tian Xiezi, and the other must be Lai Shan Xiao. I wonder which two of the four are them, and who are the other two? Now that the fifth ocean had collapsed, the four of them had disappeared without a trace. However, no matter what, all of this was closely related to the ancient will of Deathland. If we find that ancient will, we will find them. A freezing glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. When he lowered his head in silence, he remembered the fight against the ancient will in the fake fifth true world. Although this battle appeared to be a simple one, it actually contained the accumulation of countless years, as well as the invisible battle between Su Xian Yi and the ancient will. My previous guess was correct. Dao Kong entered Divine Essence Star Ocean because of Su Xian Yi's will. He sent this body to me, and his goal was for me to possess it. Once I possessed Dao Kong, I would obtain true Morning Dao World's Kismet, but all of this was to numb the ancient will in Death region. The true attack was the black stone fragment Xiao Hong gave me under Dark Mountain in the past. the seed of life extermination. All of this was prepared by Su Xianyi. A slightly complicated expression appeared on Su Ming's face. He remembered the ancient will's roar of unwillingness to admit defeat before it disappeared. Clearly, to the ancient will, if he wanted to know everything that happened in Yin Death region, he would definitely be able to notice it. However, Su Xian had used some unknown method to conceal the black stone fragment Xiao Hong had given him in the past, or perhaps he had made the ancient will misunderstand it, which was why he had overlooked it. Yet in the end, the ancient will had understood everything, and that was why he had said those words. When Su Ming thought back to everything that had happened, he felt complicated emotions towards Su Xianyi. There was resentment in his emotions, but also a sigh. Even though he had never met his father before, his unseen actions were filled with great fatherly love. It did not matter whether it was giving him the seed of life extermination in the past or sending Dao Kong to possess him. In fact, there had to be some other things that Su Ming could not detect. Su Ming could sense his fatherly love from all these things. If that's the case, then why did you leave me alone in the land of berserkers? Why did you separate my physical body from my soul? Why did you leave my mother alone in the fifth kiln? Just where are you? Just who are you? Su Ming mumbled. He knew that all of this would be revealed to him once he returned to true morning Dao world. After remaining silent for a moment, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. Since I can't find the true entrance to the fifth true world, then it is time for me to leave the barren lands of divine essence and return to true morning Dao world. Su Ming turned his head around and looked at the galaxy in the distance. A resolute and fierce look appeared in his eyes. He wanted to return to true morning Dao world and retrieve his physical body so that he could learn the answers behind all of this. He wanted to find out who Su Xianyi was. That's right, I'm going back to true morning Dao world. Darn it all, I want to go back too because I can hear all the crystals in true morning Dao world calling out to the great bald crane. They're waiting for the great, supreme bald crane to love them. Hurry up, let's go back. The bald crane's face was filled with excitement. It let out a shrill cry, and the intoxicated look on its face made it clear that it was fantasizing about a beautiful future. True morning Dao world. Su Ming moved forward, and the sound of air being sliced rose into the air as he charged forward. With the fifth kiln, and as the current scion of the seed of life extermination, he was already the strongest person in divine essence Star Ocean. So what if he ran into Almighties in Mastery Realm? Su Ming did not need to use the fifth kiln. He could fight against them on his own. Even if they were Almighties in Fate Realm, Su Ming had the art to cut fate in the fifth kiln, so he could still fight against them. The only pity was that Su Ming did not want to bring the fifth kiln out of this place. If it was left in this place, it would be able to bring out its full potential. I have to leave this place and return to true morning Dao world. I want to go home. Su Ming became faster. As he turned into a long arc that charged through the galaxy, the color of his hair gradually changed. It was no longer red, but neither was it gold. Instead, it returned to its original color, and nostalgia appeared in his eyes. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, and Huzi, Su Ming became even faster. In a flash, he shifted and moved across the galaxy. Yu Xian as well, the bald crane immediately said. As the Abyss Dragon's boss, it felt that it should speak up for the Abyss Dragon at that moment. Yu Xian. A hint of nostalgia appeared in Su Ming's eyes. In his memories, there was a woman who had been staring at him while eating melon seeds with a grin on her face. Several days later, Su Ming appeared beyond a burning planet between the inner and outer parts of Divine Essence Star Ocean. That planet was burning with thick flames, and it was the planet of Flame Fiend's progenitor. It was the place where Flame Fiend's progenitor resided. When he appeared, Su Ming looked at the planet. After some time, he suddenly spoke, and his voice turned into a thunderous roar. When it reverberated in all directions, it traveled into Flame Fiend's planet. Flame Fiend's progenitor. Do you still remember your old friend from the fifth kiln? Flame Fiend's progenitor. Do you still remember your grandpa, Crane? The bald crane also shouted loudly. It had intentionally stood in front of Su Ming. By doing so, it would make it feel that it was the center of attention, while Su Ming, who was behind it, was just its guard. The man and the crane's voices traveled into Flame Fiend's planet and into the ears of all the Flame Fiends in the planet. They turned into a thunderous roar that turned into a mighty pressure. When it descended, it immediately caused the planet to shudder. All the Flame Fiends in it shuddered. Under that mighty pressure, they could not summon any will to fight back. Instead, they felt as if the world was about to crumble and all manner of things were about to cease to exist. As they trembled, they let out piercing screams, but all of them prostrated themselves on the ground, unable to stand up. In the depths of Flame Fiend's planet was a statue in the magma in the karst cave. At that moment, it shuddered, and a large amount of cracks appeared on it, revealing the body of Flame Fiend's progenitor. His eyes were originally closed, but at that moment he opened them swiftly. When he looked towards the galaxy, a wild and untamed voice tumbled out of his mouth. Which old friend? Before he could finish speaking, Flame Fiend's progenitor started trembling violently. Excitement appeared on his face, and without any hesitation, he rushed upwards. With a bang, the planet trembled, and Flame Fiend's progenitor turned into a long arc that shot up from the ground. In an instant, he rushed out of the planet and stood in the galaxy, where he saw Su Ming looking at him with his eyes trained on him. You. Flame Fiend's progenitor stared at Su Ming, and the excitement on his face turned into pleasant surprise. He knew that Su Ming would definitely return one day. I'm back. Su Ming stared at Flame Fiend's progenitor, and a smile appeared on his face. It could be said that he and Flame Fiends had gone through many things in the fifth kiln. The two of them had fought against each other in the beginning, and Flame Fiend's progenitor submitted to him. Then, as they interacted with each other, they slowly began to feel as if they were friends. In the end, one sea long and long high left one after another at the edge of the fifth ocean. Flame Fiend's progenitor gritted his teeth and stayed behind. At that time, Su Ming no longer treated him as an enemy, but a friend. Thank you for the matter regarding the fifth ocean. Su Ming stared at Flame Fiend's progenitor, wrapped his fist in his palm, and bowed to him. This bow immediately made Flame Fiend's progenitor nervous. He instinctively took a few steps back and looked at Su Ming hesitantly. This person's impression in his mind was simply too strong. Such courteous words caused him to feel incredibly uncomfortable, and he became even more suspicious. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Achitian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1138. When Su Ming saw Flame Fiend's progenitor reacting this way, he laughed wryly in his heart and intentionally put on an aloof expression before letting out a cold harumph. When Flame Fiend's progenitor heard it and saw Su Ming's icy expression, he immediately felt that everything was normal. Just as he was about to say something, Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed at him. Flame Fiend's progenitor immediately shuddered. Gradually, a large amount of sweat broke out on his body. It was black, and once it seeped out of his body, it swiftly gathered together to turn into a water droplet that was the size of a fist and exuded a foul stench. Once it disappeared before Flame Fiend's progenitor, an incredibly relaxed feeling rose in his heart. The seal has been broken. Walk away. Don't go to the fifth kiln anymore. If fate wills it, we will meet again in the future. Farewell. Su Ming cast a glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor again. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, his footsteps suddenly came to a halt. When he turned his head around, he asked, "Where does Zhu Yu Kai live?" "In Husband Gazing Mountain," Flame Fiend's progenitor quickly answered. At that moment, the excitement he felt when he first saw Su Ming had already disappeared. The wariness he felt towards Su Ming 100 years ago, along with the strong impression he had of him, rose in his mind once more. Su Ming nodded and cast a glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor. When he saw the cautious look on his face, a hint of a smile slowly appeared at the corners of his lips. However, he did not know that when Flame Fiend's progenitor saw it, his heart immediately let out a thump against his chest, and terror instantly filled him. What's going on? This guy who kills without batting an eyelid, is ruthless and calculative actually smiled? Something's off. Something's really off. Flame Fiend's progenitor became even more cautious, and he instinctively took a few steps back. I want to return to true Morning Dao world. Come with me, Su Ming said flatly. He turned around and no longer bothered about whether Flame Fiend's progenitor was conflicted or not. He walked towards the galaxy. By his side, the bald crane let out a fake cough and cast a profound glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor. This is very important. Look away. You have to think about this carefully. Heh. In the end, the bald crane even tried to scare him. It felt that its current state was the most wonderful state it had ever been in its life. While it tried to scare him, it did not forget to let out a few harumphs. Flame Fiend's progenitor was instantly conflicted. He watched Su Ming leave into the distance, then heard the bald crane's threatening voice. He turned his head around to look at Flame Fiend's planet behind him, and hesitation filled his heart. He was not worried about his people. With the Flame Fiend's divine abilities, even if he was not around, nothing major would happen in Divine Essence Star Ocean. Instead, if he followed Su Ming, he might be able to obtain a great serendipity. When Flame Fiend's progenitor remembered Su Ming's actions on the way 100 years ago, it immediately gave him confidence. He gritted his teeth, and determination appeared on his face. Flame Fiend's progenitor immediately turned his head around and roared at Flame Fiend Star. If I follow a scheming person like him, at the very least, I won't be at a disadvantage in front of outsiders. Immediately, Flame Fiend's planet descended into chaos. Countless Flame Fiends flew up and looked at their progenitor in the galaxy. There was reluctance in their eyes, but they still knelt down to worship him. Flame Fiend's progenitor let out a few more shouts, a clear sign that he was giving orders to his people after he left. Then, under his people's reluctant gazes, he turned his head around and turned into a ball of purple flames that charged forward in the direction Su Ming had left. Husband Gazing Mountain was a mountain that seemed to exist eternally in the galaxy. Murmurs travel from the top of the mountain all year round. As the beautiful legends about the mountain spread, the murmurs would always stir up the curiosity of those who came to the mountain. At that moment, Su Ming stood on a big rock that protruded out from the center of the mountain. Beside him were the bald crane and Flame Fiend's progenitor. Before Su Ming was a dark mountain cave. Su Ming wrapped his fist in his palm toward the mountain cave and said calmly, "Senior Chang, greetings." The mountain cave was quiet. After a long while, a muffled bang came from within, and an incomparably plump, ferocious, and ugly figure slowly walked out of the mountain cave to appear before Su Ming's eyes. Zhu Yukai. His eyes were bloodshot. When he walked out, he stared at Su Ming. There was struggle and madness in his eyes. After some time, his expression slowly calmed down. He sat down limply by the side, and when he lifted his head to look at Su Ming, his expression had already returned to normal. "You're back," he said faintly. Su Ming nodded. "Senior, thank you for helping me in the Fifth Ocean in the past. About your wife." When Su Ming said these words, he paused for a moment. Zhu Yukai's expression was calm. His gaze landed on Su Ming's face as he waited for him to continue. "When my level of cultivation is high enough and I can activate my own abyssal world, I will definitely revive her," Su Ming said slowly. He did not have a great understanding of abyss builders, but he had a general idea that they had an inborn ability that allowed them to revive the dead. However, the prerequisite for this sort of revival was that they had to activate their own abyssal world. Su Ming did not know the specifics, and neither did the Duke of Crimson Flame. However, Su Ming believed that as his level of cultivation increased, there would come a day when he would come to understand his race's inborn ability. Before that, if you trust me, I can open the fifth kiln and have your wife's soul fuse into it, so that she can receive its nourishment to ensure that her soul will not scatter during this period of time. With sincerity on his face, Su Ming bowed towards Zhu Yukai. Zhu Yukai was silent. After a long while, he stood up and lifted his head to look at the summit. After some time, Zhu Yukai asked calmly, "Have you heard of the legend of this mountain?" "I've heard of it before." Su Ming nodded. In the past, the woman waited for her husband's return on this mountain. As time passed, she never saw him return, and her body turned into a rock. The presence of her longing turned into this mountain. In the past, when I was in the fifth kiln, I thought that I had already died, and I was determined to die, but when I died, I woke up again. However, when I woke up, I was here and my body was in this state. I don't know the answer to all of this, but I can sense that there is another person in this body of mine. This person coexists with me. His name is Zhu Yukai. He looked at the summit, and his voice echoed in the area. "Do you want to go to the summit and see the woman who has turned into a rock?" Zhu Yukai turned into a long arc that charged towards the summit. Su Ming watched Zhu Yukai leave into the distance. Even though the legend he spoke of did not quite match with what he had heard, Su Ming still chose to turn into a long arc and head to the summit. When the bald crane arrived at the mountain, its expression became slightly gloomy. At that moment, it stared at the mountain cave with a blank look on its face. In silence, it followed behind Su Ming and headed to the summit. The summit of the mountain was not a place a normal person could enter, but it was different for Zhu Yukai and Su Ming. They did not spend too much time before they arrived at the top of the mountain. Su Ming saw a stone golem at the top of the mountain. Based on its appearance, it should be a woman. She stood at the summit and stared into the distance. No one knew what she was looking at. Zhu Yukai stared at the statue, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Perhaps it was not as he had said. He did not know why he had woken up in this place after he died. Perhaps he knew the reason, but he did not want to say it. It was his secret. Behind Su Ming, the bald crane shuddered. Grief appeared in its eyes as it stared at the statue. As it stared at it, it felt as if it was immersed in eternity. This was something that could not be seen on normal days. "Why do I feel so uncomfortable? It's like my body is about to disappear," the bald crane mumbled. At that moment, a few scenes rose in its head. Those scenes were blurry, but vaguely, there seemed to be a woman in them with her back turned towards it. She was like a statue as she stared at the galaxy in the distance. The bald crane could only watch her from behind and hide its emotions, not wanting to reveal them. Then, one day, when the woman cried while staring at the galaxy, the bald crane heard itself murmuring. "So what if its arid triad expands cosmos? So what if my soul disperses? I will help you find him." The voice echoed in the bald crane's head. As it listened to it, it could hear the anguish in its voice. The bald crane's vision became blurry. The scenes in its head shattered into pieces, and they swept it away, making it feel uncomfortable and sad. "This means that before you have enough power to activate your own abyssal world, I will have to stay by your side to protect you." After a long while, Zhu Yukai averted his gaze from the stone person and turned his head around to look at Su Ming. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he met Zhu Yukai's gaze. "You can understand it that way. I don't need the fifth kiln's nourishment. With my power, I can constantly ensure that her soul does not disappear." Zhu Yukai closed his eyes. When he opened them again, a hint of fatigue appeared on his face. "Then, if you don't keep your promise and revive her, I will make you feel the same pain," Zhu Yukai said calmly. He lifted his foot and took a step forward into the galaxy. "Unless I die, I will not go back on my word." Su Ming enunciated each word clearly. He took a step forward, but just as he was about to leave into the distance, he suddenly noticed something. He turned his head around to cast a glance at the bald crane, and a pensive look appeared on his face before he left into the distant galaxy. Su Ming was in front, and the bald crane was by his side. Occasionally, it would turn its head back to look at the mountain. Behind them were Zhu Yukai and Flame Fiend's progenitor. The strange expression on the bald crane's face also attracted Zhu Yukai's attention, but he did not say anything. He also had a pensive look on his face. As the group charged forward, They left the periphery of divine essence Star Ocean and moved past Blacking Planet to step into Western Ring Nebula. Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. At the instant Su Ming stepped into Western Ring Nebula, a brilliant light shone in his eyes. Before he left the barren lands of divine essence, his final stop would be Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. Over there, it would be time for his Akang clone to devour the other Akang souls. Once he succeeded, Su Ming's level of cultivation would immediately increase by a large margin. Because of it, when he returned to True Morning Dao World, he would be able to stir up True Morning Dao World's disaster. This is the name I habitually chose when I update the first volume. Damn it, in truth, the previous chapter was the first chapter of the 5th volume. Please forgive me, it'll be fine in the future. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1139. Western Ring Nebula's foreign land was filled with countless cracks in the galaxy. Even though hundreds of years had passed since then, the mysteries of the place and the various rumors about it still remained in the hearts of the cultivators in the place, and they would not disappear. Once they stepped into Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, there was a high possibility that they would never be able to come out again. The mysterious veil that shrouded Western Ring Nebula was nothing to Su Ming, but to most cultivators, the mysterious mighty pressure was enough to suffocate them. After hundreds of years, when Su Ming returned to Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, he stared at the crack in the galaxy in silence. The scene of him being forced to step into the place hundreds of years ago by the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over the galaxy appeared in his mind. He also remembered the scene of him being chased down by an almighty in Mastery Realm after he left the place. Right then, if that almighty in Mastery Realm still dared to attack him, then Su Ming would cut off that person's hand without any hesitation. In silence, Su Ming spoke faintly. Senior Changhe, please wait here for a moment. I have something to do here. Zhu Yikai did not speak. Instead, he closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged in the galaxy. Su Ming turned his head around and cast a glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor. The thin old man immediately put on an obsequious smile and nodded repeatedly, as if Su Ming's words were an imperial edict. In the face of Flame Fiend's progenitor's expression, before Su Ming could say anything, the bald crane, which had long since ceased to be confused, as if it was heartless and had long since lost all its sadness, suddenly glared at Flame Fiend's progenitor. It sensed an incredibly great threat that charged straight into its mind. That threat came from the obsequious expression on Flame Fiend's progenitor's face. It displeased the bald crane greatly. It immediately spread open its bald wings and put on an arrogant look before it glared at Flame Fiend's progenitor with a profound look. Then, it immediately bent its back and looked at Su Ming with the same obsequious gaze. It quickly said, "Boss, do you want the bald crane to go and take a look at this place? If there's any danger, with my abilities, I can resolve it. I'm not like those people who have flames all over their bodies and don't know how to share the danger for you." It was rare for the bald crane to say such obsequious words. Su Ming casted a sideways glance and smiled faintly. Flame Fiend's progenitor was momentarily stunned. He scrutinized the bald crane, and an expression of wanting to share the danger appeared on his face. He might be an almighty in Mastery Realm, but no matter how high his level of cultivation was, it was difficult for him to change his nature. It was just like Flame Fiend's progenitor. When he was not a progenitor in the past, he might have had decent potential, but he had obtained the legacy of the progenitor of Flame Fiend's progenitor, allowing him to reach Mastoff Mastery Realm of fiends. And it was just that he hadn't used this ability for a long time. Now that he was using it, he wasn't as smooth as he used it in the past. Su Ming did not bother himself with the hidden fight between the bald crane and Flame Fiend's progenitor. He charged towards the crack leading to Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. In the span of a breath, he stepped into the crack and disappeared without a trace. The bald crane might have been speaking confidently, but in truth, it did not want to go to Western Ring Nebula's foreign land anymore. The scene of it fainting in this place in the past had left a shadow in its heart. Right then, when it saw Su Ming stepping in alone, it instantly let out a sigh of relief in its heart, but anxiety appeared on its face. It turned its head around and glared at Flame Fiend's progenitor. Flame Fiend's progenitor's expression did not change. He stared at the bald crane with a grin. An obsequious look appeared on his face, but he was laughing coldly in his heart. I've fooled plenty of my people with this look in the past. I might not be able to deceive the cunning Su Ming, but you little bird, I'll definitely make you run circles and circles. When the bald crane saw Flame Fiend's progenitor acting this way, its heart instantly let out a thump. It had a feeling that it had underestimated this person. Hence, when it let out a cold harumph in its heart, its expression changed, and its previous angry glare turned into a smile. It took a step forward and hugged the thin Flame Fiend's progenitor. As it laughed, it looked as if they were on very good terms. Boihua, at the first moment I saw you, I thought that you were someone I could befriend. You flatter me. Fellow Taoist crane, you have the air of an immortal, but I don't dare try to befriend you. Are you looking down on your grandpa, Crane? The man and Crane each had their own thoughts. Forget about their verbal and covert fight. It was quiet in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. There were 100,000 stone monuments, and quite a number of them were more than 1 million feet tall. Among them, there were 10,000 stone monuments. Their color might seem normal, but if anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see that they were purple. There were quite a number of people sitting and meditating under the 100,000 stone monuments. These people would occasionally lift their heads to look at the 10,000 purple stone monuments, and longing as well as envy would appear on their faces. At that moment, there were dozens of people sitting under the 10,000 purple stone monuments. They did not move, and their expressions were calm. However, within that calmness was determination and a sense of superiority. It was because they had the purple stone monuments, and because they were the only ones among the 100,000 stone monuments that would not be wiped off by the will of the law in this place. The purple stone monuments could only add people to their numbers, and no one would die. However, this was not absolute. Even though the arrival of outsiders would not cause them to die in their place, there was another law on the purple stone monuments, and all the people in this place knew about it. Every year, 10 people would die, and these 10 people were the 10 people with the weakest levels of cultivation. No matter how tall one's stone monument was, as long as one's level of cultivation remained at the bottom during the 100 years, then they would be wiped off. Because of that, while the possessors of the purple stone monuments possessed some unique traits, all the cultivators who had purple stone monuments would also sink into a state of cultivation for the sake of their lives. Purple stone monuments. It's a pity that when I entered this place, the purple stone monuments did not choose me. Otherwise, if I could become their tribute, I wouldn't have to live in fear every single day. As long as I trained madly, I would be able to avoid being killed. This is fate. But why are the purple stone monuments so special in this place? And why do I see that there are only a few thousand people on the purple stone monuments? You've only been here for a short period of time. This matter has a lot to do with a legend from a long time ago. In the quiet land of the 100,000 stone monuments, there would occasionally be gazes on the 10,000 purple stone monuments, and faint voices of a few people would echo in the air. Just as they were discussing among themselves, the tallest of the purple stone monuments, which was a gigantic stone monument that was more than 100,000 feet tall, suddenly shone, and an old man walked out from it. The old man's face was ancient. The instant he walked out, he instantly attracted the gazes of all the people in the area, especially the dozens of people outside the purple stone monument. All of them bowed deeply towards the old man. "Greetings, ancestor." The old man nodded. Without saying a single word, he sat down cross-legged under the stone monument and closed his eyes to meditate. It's Zhao family's progenitor. The people from the other stone monuments started discussing in low voices again. That's right. This person's stone monument has long since reached the point where he can go out, but he chose not to. Instead, he chose to train madly. I heard someone say that there was a legend in this place in the past about someone called Emosu. Silence. It's best if you don't mention that name in this place. He's not someone we can talk about. Oh, then why can Big Brother Zhou mention him? Big Brother Zhou? You're talking about Zhou Kong, right? He's different from us. Just as the people from the other stone tablets were conversing with each other, the entire land of the 100,000 stone tablets suddenly began to tremble violently. It was as if the wind was surging and the clouds were surging. Rumbling sounds came from all directions in the air. The rumbling sound spread out in all directions and caused the ground to tremble. As the air in the area tumbled about non-stop, it turned into a drastic change that swept through the land. Cries of surprise instantly spread through the area. Originally, there were only a few cultivators sitting around the countless stone monuments, but now, as the booming sounds in the area deafened the ears, all the stone monuments started trembling violently. As the stone steels trembled, they began to shine with dazzling light. One by one, the cultivators were forced out of the stone steels. Some of them had serious expressions on their faces, while others had looks of panic on their faces. All of them looked up into the sky. Bang! A loud bang that sounded like the might of heaven came tumbling down from above. The originally indistinct purple hue on the 10,000 purple stone monuments among the 100,000 stone monuments shone with a purple light that had never appeared before. That light was piercing to the eyes and instantly covered the land, causing the 10,000 purple stone monuments among the 100,000 stone monuments to be incredibly eye-catching. Zhao family's progenitor's heart trembled. He opened his eyes swiftly, and when he lifted his head to look upwards, a rare hint of excitement appeared on his face. All the owners of the purple stone monuments by his side started trembling violently. They could clearly sense an incredibly familiar feeling and a strong urge to worship it. As the tremors in the land grew stronger, that urge grew stronger in their hearts. The change in this place was something many of them had never seen before, but there were still some who seemed to have remembered something. Their expressions became one of excitement, but also one of anxiety. Zhou Kong sat quietly under the stone monument and lifted his head to look at the tumbling air above him. A hint of emotion appeared in his eyes. He knew that Emosu had returned. Zhao Tian gang, welcome back, my liege." Zhao family's progenitor stood up, wrapped his fist in his palm, and bowed deeply towards the sky. When his ancient voice echoed in the air, all the owners of the purple stone monuments worshipped the sky. "Welcome back, my liege." That voice spread out with loud rumbles and shook the other 90,000 people on the stone monuments, causing their expressions to change non-stop. At that moment, the sky rumbled, and the layers of fog and clouds tumbled backwards madly to reveal a huge crack. A figure with an indifferent expression walked towards them from the distance, and it became clearer with each passing moment. Emosu, requesting recommendation votes to be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1140. Su Ming stood in midair. As the clouds and fog tumbled about behind him, a crack in space whose end could not be seen was revealed. Purple lightning howled and roared within it, causing Su Ming to be filled with mystery and awe-inspiring might in the eyes of the tens of thousands of cultivators in the area. The presence spreading out from his body swept out in all directions and suppressed all the power of cultivation in the area. This was not a mighty pressure created by the purple Akang, but his own cultivation base. With this cultivation base, Su Ming was like a god. He swept his gaze across the land, and all the cultivators who were looked at by him felt their hearts tremble. They immediately lowered their heads and could not help but worship him on the ground. When Su Ming's gaze landed on an old man in the stone monument who was looking at him with a sentimental expression, he could vaguely recognize that this person was Zhou Kong, the middle-aged man from all those years ago. Yet now, even though not much time had passed, this person had changed greatly. Because my love has died, my heart has declined. I no longer have the will to live. My body is like a corpse, and I have no desire to live. Su Ming sighed in his heart and walked over slowly. When he landed on the ground, he stood in front of Zhou Kong. "Big brother Zhou," Su Ming said softly. The white-haired Zhou Kong looked at Su Ming, and a smile appeared on his face. The two of them did not need to speak. As their gazes met, the things that had happened in this place rose in their heads. In the past, Su Ming had been as weak as an ant. If Zhou Kong had not provided him with guidance, it would have been difficult for him to survive. Su Ming would never forget this kindness. "Greetings, my lord." Zhao family's progenitor sucked in a deep breath and bowed towards Su Ming again. Su Ming turned his head around, and his gaze turned aloof. He cast a glance at Zhao family's progenitor. This person had been chased down by his enemies in the past, and with the remnants of his family, he was forced into this place to become Su Ming's purple stone monument tribute. By the looks of it, Zhao family's progenitor was about to reach a breakthrough in his level of cultivation. It was a telling sign that he had been training in this place in a frenzied manner. Continue training. When you reach Lunar Culpa Realm, or even stronger, that will be the day you can leave this place, or when all the people on the purple stone monuments have attained great completion in World Plane Realm, Su Ming said flatly. He swept his gaze past all the people on the purple stone monuments, then turned around and took a step into the air. His figure gradually disappeared, and no one knew where he had gone. However, his brief arrival had left a huge impact on the hearts of everyone present. When Su Ming disappeared, the area remained silent. After a long time, the sound of discussion faintly reverberated. "This person is... Who is this person? How is he able to make the purple stone tablet shine so brightly? He's even being addressed as master by the purple stone tablet. Besides the legendary Mo Su in Western Ring Nebula's foreign lands, who else could it be? Mo Su. He's Mo Su? In the world with the 100,000 stone monuments in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, Mo Su's name stirred up a storm once again. At that moment, Su Ming walked out of space and appeared in the 100,000 galaxies belonging to the purple Ikang. As he stared at the purple galaxy before him, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. Behind him, Ikang's true form, the gigantic tree, appeared, and a heinous, malicious presence instantly filled the entire galaxy. Su Ming slowly closed his eyes. After some time, when he opened them again, he threw his head back and let out a long roar. As he did so, the gigantic Ikang behind him charged towards him. It was as if Su Ming's body had turned into an invisible black hole that could devour everything. Once he absorbed Ikang's body into his body, cracking sounds came from within him. Branches crawled out of his body, and as the area swayed violently, a hint of purple light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, he could be said to be a complete Ikang. However, he was weaker than the Ikang in the ballad, but he surpassed the other fragments of Ikang's soul because they were not complete. However, Su Ming had already perfectly fused with Ikang's body due to the serendipity he received in the fifth kiln. Because of it, Su Ming's state of being surpassed that of the Ikang, which was still a fragment of its soul. Among the 10-colored Ikang, I am now in purple. Next, I will devour it. Purple light shone in Su Ming's eyes. When the 100,000 purple galaxies shone in his eyes, they shuddered with a bang, as if they had turned into Su Ming's eyes. As they shone, the galaxy also trembled. I wonder what color will be the first fragment of Ikang's soul to be devoured. Su Ming took a swift step forward. He was so quick that he instantly covered an endless distance. The purple galaxies behind him tumbled about as well, as if they had turned into a purple ocean. They tumbled and followed behind Su Ming, forming a presence that shook the sky and earth. As booming sounds echoed in the air, Su Ming had already arrived at the edge of the 100,000 purple galaxies. Beyond this place was the region where the other fragment of Ikang's soul was located. There was a barrier between all the fragments of a Kang's soul. This barrier was something they had set up together in the past. It was a law. It was a law that belonged to a Kang. If it had been before, this law would still have restrained Su Ming, but now, Su Ming's purple Kang was complete. What he needed was not to fuse with the other fragments of a Kang's soul, so that he could turn into the Akang in the ballad, but to devour the other Akangs and use them as nourishment so that he could control himself with his will and become the new Akang. This was not a rebirth, but a form of replacement. Boom! Su Ming used a brutal method without any technique. With his entire body and the 100,000 purple galaxies, he rammed violently against the barrier. Booming sounds reverberated in the air. The invisible barrier started trembling violently, and the sounds of the tremor spread through all of Western Ring, Nebula's foreign land, and the 1,000,000 galaxies that belonged to Akang. One Akang was 100,000 galaxies, and 10 Akangs were 1,000,000 galaxies. All 1,000,000 galaxies were trembling at that moment. Even though Su Ming had only crashed into one of the barriers, he had still shaken the entire galaxy. The spot where the 100,000 stone monuments was also trembling violently. It was as if the ground was shaking. All the stone monuments were trembling, especially the 10,000 blue stone monuments. They trembled even more violently, because the barrier Su Ming had crashed into was the spot where the purple and blue galaxies were connected. Booming sounds surged into the sky, and the expressions of all the people in the world with the 100,000 stone monuments changed drastically. At the instant a dazed look appeared on their faces, 9 gigantic wills appeared around Su Ming. They charged towards him with loud booming sounds, as if they were exasperated. "Purple, what are you doing? Purple, could it be that you want to break our promise? Get lost, Purple. If you dare trespass into my territory, then you will be breaking our promise, and I will fuse with you." As the enraged wills reverberated in the air, Su Ming's expression was aloof. He did not use words to answer the wills' words, but with his actions, with the power of the 100,000 purple galaxies, he crashed into the barrier again. As booming sounds surged into the sky, the barrier trembled even more furiously. At the instant Su Ming lifted his hands and stretched them upwards, the 100,000 purple galaxies behind him shrank and charged towards his hands, causing the purple hue around him to instantly disappear. At the same time, Akang's will, the power of the 100,000 purple galaxies, and Su Ming's cultivation base were gathered on his hands, and he stabbed them into the barrier. Cracking sounds rose into the air. Su Ming's hands shot through the barrier, and at the instant he tore at it, the invisible barrier gained form in front of him. A huge crack was torn open, and dazzling blue light spilled out from it, illuminating Su Ming's body so that it looked as if it had turned blue. So this is the blue Akang's territory. A cold sneer appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. He rushed forward and rushed in a crack. Following him was an endless amount of purple light. It was the 100,000 purple galaxies. Once they manifested again, they invaded the blue galaxy. "Purple, you're just asking for death. Purple, all of us will attack and scatter you. We'll let you know the price of breaking our promise. Purple, you broke our promise in the past. You will die. You will be fused with us. You will become nutrients for the 9 of us to grow. All of you shut up." Su Ming threw his head back and roared. When his voice spread through the 100,000 galaxies, his hair turned red, and a red glare shone in his eyes. A heinous, murderous aura erupted from his body. With a step forward, he charged towards the 100,000 blue galaxies in the distance. Almost at the same time, Su Ming headed towards a river in the galaxy. A gigantic Akang tree appeared in the blue river. That tree was incredibly huge and entirely blue. At the instant its enraged roars shook the galaxy, Su Ming had already closed in on it. Boom! The loud sound caused the blue galaxy to tremble. It caused the fragments of Akang's souls from the other 800,000 galaxies to descend swiftly. When their bodies gradually manifested, all of them froze for a moment. Shock appeared on their faces. Because in the midst of the booming sounds, Su Ming crashed into the blue Ikang's gigantic body. But almost at the instant he did so, an endless amount of branches erupted from Su Ming's body. They crawled into the blue Ikang's body, and without stopping for even a moment, they started absorbing the blue Ikang in a frenzy. "Get lost!" The blue Ikang roared. Its body moved, and Ikang's power erupted from its body. However, at the instant it touched Su Ming, it disappeared without a trace, as if it had been suppressed. This was not a suppression brought about by a person's level of cultivation, but a suppression brought about by a person's state of being. The blue Ikang's body shrank rapidly before Su Ming's eyes. As he absorbed a large amount of its power, its enraged roars turned into cries of surprise, then into trembling voices filled with fear and disbelief. You're not a fragment of a soul. You're complete. This is impossible. This is..." As the blue Ikang trembled in panic, its body shattered with a bang. Once Su Ming completely absorbed it, he turned around and looked at the 8 fragments of Ikang's souls charging towards him. The countless branches around him swept outwards, and an unprecedented presence spilled out from his body without holding anything back. Within that presence was endless malice and bloodthirstiness. The murderous aura shocked the world, and the blue galaxy disintegrated with a bang. In an instant, it turned purple. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1141. Su Ming had used dozens of breaths to possess the purple Ikang, but he had used several cycles of 60 years to absorb it. Yet now, he was devouring the blue Ikang. If a long period of time had passed, he would not have been able to shock the other Ikangs so much that they would have been in shock, but Su Ming's devouring happened in an instant. In just an instant, in the blink of an eye when he came into contact with the blue Ikang, everything was completed. The blue galaxy was instantly covered by a purple hue, as if it had been dyed in purple, causing the 100,000 blue galaxies to turn into a purple world. The number of galaxies Su Ming's Ikang possessed increased from the previous 100,000 to 200,000. It also caused Su Ming to become the strongest Ikang at the moment he finished devouring it. He might have been the strongest before, but right then, he was even stronger. The entire galaxy was purple. As invisible ripples spread out in all directions, Su Ming turned around. His pupils were still purple, because that purple color was his foundation. However, compared to before, it was even more dazzling, piercing to the eyes, and even more enchanting. The malicious presence spreading out from his body became even more monstrous. His long hair danced in the air. His robes fluttered without wind. He stood in the purple galaxy, and as he lowered his head slightly, a wild and untamed laughter spread out from his lips. When it echoed in the galaxy, the haughty air within it filled the entire area, causing the remaining 8 portions of Ikang's souls to swiftly retreat as their hearts trembled. They were about to leave the purple galaxy that was still being devoured by Su Ming. This was the core of the world with 100,000 stone monuments in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. Everything that happened here caused a chain reaction in the world outside. Almost at the instant the blue galaxy turned purple and the blue Ikang was devoured by Su Ming, a powerful purple light erupted from the 10,000 purple stone monuments in the land with the 100,000 stone monuments. That light instantly covered the entire land. Soon after, shrill screams of pain swiftly rose from the world within the 100,000 stone monuments. The ones who let out the screams did not belong to the people from the purple stone monuments, but the 10,000 people who belonged to the blue stone monuments among the 100,000 stone monuments. It did not matter what level of cultivation these 10,000 people had, whether they were men or women, young or old, all of them let out extremely miserable screams. Blood flowed out of their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and they knelt on the ground. Their bodies trembled incessantly, and complicated runic symbols appeared at the center of their brows. Those runic symbols looked like they had been branded, but they also seemed to have grown out of the center of their brows. They were blue, and they were rapidly flashing with a blue light. A large amount of cracks appeared on their stone monuments. As the cracks spread out, a faint blue light erupted from them. This scene immediately shocked the people in the area, and terror appeared on their faces. Even though the ones who screamed in pain were not the ones who were watching, the feeling of empathy was incredibly clear. The unknown of what had caused this scene turned into terror in the depths of their hearts, causing the land with the 100,000 stone monuments to immediately burst into an uproar. However, even the uproar from the tens of thousands of people could not drown out the incredibly shrill screams of pain from the people from the blue stone monuments. What happened? What's going on? How could this be? Their stone monuments actually shattered. At the instant the uproar rose in the area, the blue light shining from the cracks on the 10,000 blue stone monuments suddenly dimmed. When it disappeared without a trace, it was instantly pierced through by a thick, powerful purple light. In the blink of an eye, the 10,000 originally blue stone monuments turned purple. As the 10,000 stone monuments turned purple, the 10,000 cultivators under them screamed shrilly in pain, but they did not die. Instead, the originally rapidly flashing blue mark at the center of their brows instantly turned purple. The purple mark flashed a few times before disappearing into the center of the 10,000 cultivators' brows. Their shrill screams of pain gradually weakened, but their bodies were drenched in sweat. With fear in their eyes, they looked at their stone monuments. There were a total of 20,000 purple stone monuments erected on the land with 100,000 stone monuments. This scene instantly attracted all the people's attention, and soon, a deathly silence filled the area. They seemed to have come to a vague understanding of something, but even more so, they were at a loss, as well as fear towards the unknown. At that moment, in the core of Western Ring Nebula's foreign lands, which they could not see, were the 200,000 purple galaxies belonging to Su Ming. As he slowly lifted his head, an indescribably malicious presence spread out from his body. The smile at the corners of his lips was filled with a strange and enchanting air. The gaze formed by his purple pupils landed on the remaining fragment of a Kang's soul that was swiftly disappearing and about to leave the purple galaxy. Su Ming did not take action to stop it. He simply allowed the 8 fragments of a Kang's soul to leave. After all, even if he stopped them, it would not be of much use. Su Ming's goal was to devour their real bodies. Almost at the instant the fragments of a Kang's soul started disappearing, Su Ming turned his head around and turned into a long arc. He swept up the 200,000 purple galaxies and formed an unprecedented presence. Like a long arc, he charged into the distance. I wonder what color the next one will be. Purple light shone in Su Ming's eyes, and his speed increased exponentially. Booming sounds reverberated in the galaxy. In just the span of a few breaths, he had already closed in on the edge of another galaxy, the region with the barrier. Boom! A loud bang reverberated in the galaxy. Su Ming's body crashed into the invisible barrier, and a large area of the barrier trembled. Previously, Su Ming had crashed into the barrier of the blue galaxy twice, but now, with just one hit, the barrier was about to shatter. He lifted his right hand and struck it. Immediately, the 200,000 purple galaxies gathered on his right hand. At the instant he brought it down and touched the invisible barrier, booming sounds shook the sky and earth. The invisible barrier shattered to pieces and crumbled completely with loud bangs. At the instant it disintegrated, a red screen of light spilled out from within. Along with it was the crimson Ikang's roar. It's crimson. Su Ming moved, and with a vast amount of purple galaxies, he rushed into the crimson galaxy. When the purple color spread out, Su Ming's eyes locked onto the crimson galaxy. He turned into a long arc that charged forward as if it wanted to tear apart the crimson galaxy. It's impossible for you to fuse with me. An enraged roar came from within the river of stars, and the galaxy began to spin rapidly. Booming sounds echoed in the air, and as the river of stars spun, a gigantic vortex appeared. It swept up everything in all directions and turned into a gust of wind in the galaxy. That wind brought with it a destructive will. When it swept in all directions, a big red tree could be seen in the vortex. It was huge, and its crown was crimson. It was filled with a destructive will and madness, but it did not dare to take even half a step out of the vortex. Instead, it hid in the vortex, and with a pair of eyes that looked like annual rings, it glared at the incoming Su Ming. The images of the rotating vortex and the crimson Akang in it were reflected in Su Ming's purple pupils. He did not speak. He only lifted his right hand and spread his fingers in the direction of the galaxy above him. When he slowly clenched his fist, the purple galaxy Su Ming had brought with him instantly covered every spot in the crimson galaxy, causing everyone to be able to clearly see that besides the center, which was crimson, the rest of the galaxy was purple. Almost the instant Su Ming lifted his right hand and clenched it into a fist, all the purple that had filled the area immediately froze, as if it had frozen. Su Ming slowly swung his right hand in a circle, and once he did so, the purple that had frozen immediately started spinning as well. Su Ming swung his right hand in a circle once more, and the rotation speed of the purple galaxy increased by nearly 100 times. Booming sounds shook the sky and earth, and shook the entire area. If anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see that the purple galaxy was rotating in a completely different direction from the vortex and the galaxy in the area. "You can choose not to come out," Su Ming said in a ghastly manner. Terror appeared in the crimson Akang's eyes in the vortex in the galaxy. Clearly, it had seen through Su Ming's goal, and it started roaring. "My fellow sect members, if you don't think of a way to save me, then today will be the day Akang disappears." At the instant the crimson Akang roared, Su Ming lifted his right hand and swung it for the third time. The booming sounds instantly became even stronger, and the rotation speed of the purple galaxy around him did not increase by 100 times, but by 1,000 times. In the midst of the booming sounds, Su Ming pointed at the vortex in the galaxy with his right hand. Immediately, the rotating purple galaxy around him shrank and started rotating in the opposite direction to crash into the vortex. Rumble. It was as if the galaxy itself was trembling. A loud sound drowned out the crimson Akang's roars. At the instant, the two vortexes that were rotating in different directions crashed into each other. The galaxy vortex looked as if it had no roots. It could not fight against the vortex formed by the 200,000 galaxies. With a loud bang, it crumbled, and despair appeared on the crimson Akang's face. The difference between the realms of life and the fact that the blue Akang was devoured made it understand that this was a fate it could not fight against. In the midst of its despair, Su Ming closed in with a howl as the purple galaxy rotated. The purple galaxy spread out and covered Su Ming and the crimson Akang. After a moment, when the originally crimson galaxy turned completely purple, Su Ming slowly walked out of the purple in an even more eye-catching manner. His hair was long enough to reach his waist, and as it fluttered in the wind, he walked in the purple light. His slender body was surrounded by countless swaying branches, and his eyes were even more purple. Even though he had his head lowered, there was a savage and primitive presence spreading out from his body in a violent manner. That presence came from Akang. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1142. When the crimson Akang was devoured, the 10,000 crimson stone monuments in the land of the 100,000 stone monuments trembled violently and changed color, causing the 10,000 cultivators on them to let out shrill screams of pain. The runic symbols at the center of their brows turned purple. Because of it, there were 30,000 stone monuments that were purple in the world of the 100,000 stone monuments, and they belonged to Su Ming. The terror and panic of the people in the land of the 100,000 stone monuments became even louder. The terror continued. The screams of pain might have stopped, but the scenes that still echoed in their minds caused an unprecedented drastic change to appear in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. In fact, since this drastic change affected all the blue and crimson stone monuments, it naturally affected the owners of the stone monuments that were more than 1 million feet tall or even taller. They might not be in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, but even if they were in the world outside, they would still be unable to escape from this change that would affect their souls. There was a dull planet in Western Ring Nebula. There was a middle-aged man sitting beside a lake. In his hand was a branch, and there were emerald green leaves on it. It drooped in the water, and with an indifferent expression on his face, he looked as if he was fishing. There were two beautiful women by his side. They were kneeling behind him and gently massaging his shoulders. The sky was murky, and the ground was filled with fog. However, the man looked very clear, just like his expression. It was as if he did not care about anything and was as calm as water. Yet at that moment, his expression suddenly changed. As his expression changed, a violent wave of power erupted from his body, and it instantly sent the two women behind him tumbling backwards as they cried out in surprise. The weeping willow in his hand instantly shattered, and even the pool of water on the ground evaporated with a bang, causing the place where he stood to be filled with a violent, chaotic power for a period of time. A shrill scream came from his mouth, and his body trembled. Behind him, the two maidservants with blood flowing out of the corners of their mouths panicked. They saw that their master, who was known as the patriarch of this planet and no one dared to provoke him, had an expression of unprecedented pain on his face. That shrill scream was something they had never heard before. As he screamed, a magical symbol appeared on the man's forehead. It was crimson, but it was rapidly turning violet. A moment later, it was completely violet, and the man coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. A look of astonishment appeared on his face as he looked up into the starry sky, a look of reverence in his eyes. What happened? Why do I feel like the stone monument in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land has changed owners? The man shuddered, and after his expression changed a few times, he stood up swiftly and charged towards the sky. He wanted to return to Western Ring Nebula's foreign land to see what was going on. The scene just now had caused his heart to tremble in fear. If he did not understand what had happened, he would not be at ease. After all, his stone monument was in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. The same scene appeared in multiple places in Western Ring Nebula at the same time. In fact, a few of the forces of power from the four great true worlds acting as a lookout over the barren lands also had similar scenes. However, once the screams of pain faded away, terror appeared on all the people's faces in the midst of their anxiety. Su Ming, who had devoured the blue and crimson stars in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, walked out of the 300,000 purple galaxies. At the same time, he closed his eyes slightly, lifted his arms, and threw a punch towards both sides. These were two punches. At the instant they were thrown forward, the 300,000 purple galaxies tumbled about and surged into the sky. As loud booming sounds reverberated in space, two gigantic purple vortexes swiftly charged towards the space in the distance from Su Ming's sides. This time, Su Ming did not want to devour one, but two. Booming sounds shook the sky and earth. In just the span of a few breaths, two loud tremors surged into the air. At the instant the barriers by Su Ming's sides shattered, orange and green light spread out from the shattered barriers. Today, a king will descend into the universe. Why do you resist? With my will, I will rebuild a king. My glory will also be your glory. As Su Ming's voice echoed in space, he charged towards the orange galaxy. Stop him. If we don't stop him, we will all be destroyed by him. If I am devoured, he will become stronger. It will definitely be difficult for all of you to escape from being killed. The voice of the Orange Kang in the Orange Galaxy was filled with terror that had never been heard before as it swiftly echoed in space. How can we stop him? He has already devoured the blue and crimson stars. and his state of being is complete. Right now, his strength is not something we can fight against. How can we stop him? Green, the barrier to the galaxy where you has already been opened. Attack and fight against him together with orange. If you don't attack, it will be difficult for you to escape the fate of being fused with him. That's right. Green, attack and fight against him first. Our barriers haven't been opened. Even if our wills descend, it will be useless. Since purple is so arrogant and dare to break two barriers at the same time, you work together with orange and fuse with him. As the divine thoughts of the remaining portions of Akang's soul echoed in space, a hysterical roar came from the green galaxy. A violent wave of impact rushed into the purple galaxy and turned into a gigantic green Akang tree. A violent life force spread out from its body, and the green Akang turned into a long arc that charged towards the orange galaxy, where Su Ming was at that moment. But at the instant it approached the orange galaxy, the orange Akang's despairing roar reverberated in space. It's not impossible for you to devour me and wipe off my existence, but you want to devour me, not fuse with me. For this, I would rather destroy my consciousness and break the promise so that my body, which no longer has any consciousness, will return to this galaxy. There was madness in that voice. At the instant it reverberated in space, a loud bang that shook 1,000,000 galaxies shot into the air. As that loud bang rose up, the orange galaxy was immediately torn to pieces and completely shattered. At the same time, in a land with the 100,000 stone monuments, as the orange Akang chose to wipe off its consciousness and return to its origin, the 10,000 orange stone monuments it possessed immediately had a large amount of cracks appear on them, and they were all reduced to dust. Even the 10,000 cultivators belonging to the stone monuments shuddered simultaneously before they were torn to shreds, their forms and souls dispersing into nothingness without a single scream of pain. When the orange Akang willingly returned to its origin and crumbled, 7 seeds, shining with orange light, swiftly spread out and shot through space. One of the seeds charged straight towards the incoming green Akang and instantly rushed into its body, causing the green Akang to shudder and let out a long howl that echoed in the area. As it let out a long howl, the green Akang's presence swiftly increased exponentially. It was much stronger than before. At the same time, 5 long howls echoed in the air from the 1,000,000 galaxies. Those were the other 5 colored Akangs. They had also absorbed the origin of the orange Akang's body after it had its consciousness wiped off. As they fused with it, all of them instantly became stronger. Su Ming had also absorbed one of the 6 orange seeds, but it was just one portion. It was not as complete as when he devoured it previously. With one move, as the orange galaxy crumbled, he charged towards the green Akang that had come to a halt. Madness appeared in the green Akang's eyes that were like the rings of a tree. Once it fused with the rampaging life force spreading out from its body, it swiftly closed its eyes. In the end, you will obtain the complete fusion with Akang. You must remember, kill this person as an offering for us to willingly become the origin of power. The green Akang knew that even if it had absorbed one of the seeds formed by the orange Akang's origin, it still could not escape from Su Ming. Since the orange Akang could wipe off its consciousness and return to its origin, then it could do the same. His body let out a bang, and when he closed his eyes, a power that roared to the heavens spread out from his body. As he crumbled, he exploded into pieces and turned into 6 green seeds that shot through the space around him. Even with Su Ming's speed, he could not stop the 6 green seeds from disappearing. One of them charged towards his body and fused with it. 5 roars immediately came from the space around him. An even stronger ripple of power came from that roar. The remaining 5 portions of Akang's soul were much stronger than before, but even if they were alone, they were still not Su Ming's opponent. However, if 4 of the 5 portions of Akang's soul were willing to turn into celestial essences, then the Akang that would appear in the end would be the Akang that shook the universe in Old Man Extermination's ballad. It had been schemed against by Sui Chenzi in the past, and had been forced to split up to recuperate. Once its injuries were healed, it would fuse with the others and appear. Yet now, if it fused like this, then even if it would still be the Ikang of the past, it would not be as strong as before. However, even if it would not be as strong as it was in the past, with its memories, it would still be enough to threaten Su Ming. Su Ming had thought of this, which was why he had devoured it in a clean and resolute manner. But this sort of change had still happened. However, since Su Ming had expected this to happen a long time ago and still dared to devour the portions of Ikang's soul, then he naturally had a way to do so. As of then, the relationship between him and the remaining 5 portions of Ikang's soul was incredibly strange. Whoever he chose would turn into Origin, and the last one who was not chosen would become the dominant, will to awaken the true Ikang. Because of it, choosing one of them would mean that they would lose the right to become the true Ikang. To the remaining 5 portions of Ikang's soul, this was the most important thing in their lives, and it was even more important than their lives. A strange and enchanting smile slowly appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. It's not that I absolutely want to devour all of you today. I only want to devour 3 complete portions of Ikang's soul. Right now, I'm still missing one. Once I devour one more, I won't devour anymore. I wonder which of the 5 portions of Ikang's soul will be willing to fulfill my wish. When Su Ming said these words, the hearts of the 5 portions of Ikang's soul trembled furiously. The threat Su Ming posed to them was incredibly great, and they did not want to wipe off their consciousness either. However, which of the 5 portions of Ikang's soul would be willing to be devoured? To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1143. They could not choose, and none of them were willing to be devoured. However, Su Ming's goal was not to let them choose. He moved, and the 300,000 purple galaxies gathered on his body. He turned into a long purple arc that charged towards the invisible barrier at the other end. The power of the 300,000 galaxies allowed Su Ming to move like a hot knife through butter. At the instant he touched the invisible barrier, it let out a bang and shattered. As it shattered to pieces, a white galaxy swiftly spread out from the shattered barrier. The white Ikang. In truth, the 10 souls of Ikang were not truly equal in power. Among them, black, white, and gray were the strongest, while the remaining 7 colors were similar to each other. At the instant Su Ming saw the white light in the galaxy, a glint appeared in his eyes. When he stepped into the white galaxy, he immediately saw that there were no galaxies in it. This was completely different from the 7-colored Ikang soul. At the center of the galaxy was an old man in white robes. He had his eyes open at that moment, and he was staring at Su Ming calmly. "I have been waiting for you," the old man in white said faintly. His voice echoed in the galaxy, and there was an ancient and gentle tone to it. "It doesn't matter whether you are a Kang or a cultivator. The signs of your life are a Kang. It doesn't matter whether you were a Kang in the past or in the future. You are still a Kang." The old man stood up slowly. His voice was calm, but there was a liking to it that would cause others to be unable to help but like him. The 10 souls of a Kang have 3 colors as their main colors, and the 7 colors as their support. The white color controls a Kang's kindness, and it controls the changes in the universe. The black color controls a Kang's evil, and it controls the madness of destroying the world. The gray color is stillness. It is born with the world, and it will perish with the world. Su Ming's expression remained the same. He stared at the old man in white coldly and took a step forward. The old man did not dodge, and his expression did not even change. That is why as long as you are a Kang, it doesn't matter whether you devour us or fuse with us. I hope that there will come a day when we, a Kang, descend into the universe once more. Since you can do it, then why should I be stingy with my will? It doesn't matter if you devour me. The old man smiled faintly. When Su Ming approached him, he slowly closed his eyes. His actions immediately caused Su Ming's pupils to shrink in a barely noticeable manner. Most of the fragments of Akang's souls he had met previously were violent and did not have high intelligence. But the old man in white, that was the white Akang, was completely different. Su Ming did not speak. As his eyes sparkled, his speed increased exponentially. Once he closed in on the old man in the span of a breath, he lifted his right hand, and a large number of branches instantly spread out from his fingers to charge at the center of the old man's brows. Immediately, the old man's body started withering right before Su Ming's eyes. A large amount of Akang's essence of life instantly surged into Su Ming's body. This essence of life surpassed the blue and crimson Su Ming had devoured previously. It was so vast that the purple light in Su Ming's eyes instantly became even brighter. Yet at the instant Su Ming devoured and absorbed the essence of life from the old man formed by the white Akang, the old man suddenly opened his eyes. A sinister look appeared in them, and he swiftly formed a seal with his hands before he flung them to the sides. If Akang is illusory, then the universe will be corporeal. If Akang is corporeal, then the universe will be illusory. As the old man's voice echoed in the air, the white galaxy where he stood instantly shone with a piercing white light. As booming sounds reverberated in the air, the entire galaxy turned into a gigantic white Akang tree at that instant. That tree existed between being an illusion and having corporeal form. It filled the entire galaxy, or perhaps more accurately speaking, the white galaxy was a part of its body. At that moment, when Akang revealed itself, it was as if it had devoured Su Ming. This person wants to drive a wedge between us. My fellow sect members, do not be deceived by him. I am willing to wipe off my consciousness and self-destruct with him. If I succeed, then one of you will definitely be able to awaken Akang. If I fail, then all of you will make the same choice as me. At the instant the old man's voice echoed in all directions, the gigantic white Akang crumbled with a bang. As it was torn to pieces, it stirred up the power of destruction in its body and swept towards Su Ming, intending to destroy him as well. However, at the instant the white Akang exploded, a wave of purple that surged into the sky swiftly spilled out from its body. As the purple light appeared, a purple Akang appeared within the white Akang's body. This scene was just like how Akang had replaced Sui Chunzi in the past, and it was born from the universe. Su Ming's purple Akang appeared from the white Akang's destruction. At the instant it appeared, purple and white shone rapidly in the galaxy. At the instant loud booming sounds shook the sky and earth, the white Akang completely crumbled. Its origin power turned into 5 parts. One of them fused into Su Ming's body, while the other 4 seeped through space and charged towards the other 4 Akangs. This scene was equivalent to a repeat of what had happened before. If this continued, then one of the Akangs would definitely awaken its origin, and the will of the Akangs would descend once again under its lead. This was also what Su Ming did not want to happen to most. At that moment, when he saw the 4 origin powers that belonged to the white Akang disappear into space, and he appeared from the crumbling white Akang's body, Su Ming's voice reverberated in the 1,000,000 galaxies with a monstrous killing intent and resolution before it traveled into the hearts of the remaining 4 Akangs. Whoever snatches the origin power of Akang that belongs to me will be the next. Let me devour this white Akang completely, and I will give you a relative amount of time. As his voice echoed in space, it traveled into the hearts of the black, gray, green, and yellow Akangs. The black Akang was the first to devour the origin power sent by the white Akang without any hesitation. At the same time, the gray Akang did the same. The galaxy where they were spread out and became much larger. However, after a moment of hesitation, the green and yellow Akangs did not choose to devour the origin power. Instead, they brought forth their power and sent the incoming origin power that belonged to the white Akang out of the galaxy where they were. Soon after, the origin power shone in the galaxy where they belonged, letting Su Ming know of their will. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He sucked in a deep breath, and the two white Ikang's origin power that had been sent out were immediately absorbed. Su Ming threw his head back and roared. As purple light filled his entire body, the galaxy, where he was spread out from the previous 300,000 to 400,000. Black, gray, you're just asking for death. Purple light shone in Su Ming's eyes. He ignored the yellow and green Ikang's galaxies and took a swift step towards the invisible barrier where the other two galaxies were. Devour them. There's still 4 of us remaining. As long as I can last until the end, then I will definitely be the one to take the initiative to awaken Ikang. By then, even if I still can't fight against purple, I can still protect myself. The green Ikang's eyes shone in the green galaxy. It noticed that once it devoured a part of the blue and orange Ikang's origin power, its intelligence seemed to have been enlightened. The yellow Ikang had the same thought. Su Ming was so quick that he instantly rammed his fist against the invisible barrier. As it crumbled, the black light from the galaxy shot out. A low roar reverberated in space, and a fist stretched out from the crack in the barrier to crash against Su Ming's right hand. With a bang, the fist in the black galaxy tumbled backwards to reveal an old man in black robes. His face was filled with killing intent, and as he retreated, he came to a halt and rushed towards Su Ming again. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. With a cold harumph, he took a step forward. The old man who was the black Ikang threw his head back and roared. Immediately, the black galaxy where he was turned into a gigantic black Ikang, and as if it was collapsing, it fell towards Su Ming. Su Ming roared as well. The 400,000 purple galaxies around him turned into purple Ikangs, and they fell with the same posture. The two Ikangs crashed into each other in the galaxy. Booming sounds surged into the heavens. An invisible barrier connecting the black galaxy in the distance also let out booming sounds at that moment. Amidst the booming sounds, it was as if someone was continuously striking the barrier behind him in an attempt to walk out. Clearly, the galaxy that belonged to the gray Ikang was behind the invisible barrier. Ikang! A large amount of essence of life flowed out of the mouth of the old man, who was the black Ikang. This was not blood, but the power of its essence. During the previous collision, it was absolutely not Su Ming's opponent. At that moment, as it roared, all the leaves on the black Ikang's tree crown around it started trembling. As they shot out, they turned into a windstorm formed by black leaves that charged towards Su Ming with a howl. Ikang, Su Ming said faintly. He knew the same divine ability. The purple Ikang turned around, and an endless amount of purple leaves fell from its body. They turned into a vortex and charged forward. Booming sounds reverberated in the air again, and the old man who was the black Ikang coughed up a large amount of essence of life again. As it fell backwards, the invisible barrier behind it crumbled with a bang. A large amount of gray light spread out from within, and an old man dressed in a long gray robe walked out. Once it appeared, it did not look towards Su Ming. Instead, it charged towards the black old man. Understanding and resolution appeared in the black old man's eyes. He gritted his teeth and did not dodge, simply allowing the old man in gray to close in on him. When the old man pushed his palm against the top of his skull, the old man's body shattered with a bang. A vast amount of origin power, essence of life, turned into fog, and when the old man in gray sucked it in, it fused into his body. At the same time, Su Ming's eyes sparkled. He lifted his hands, took a few brisk steps forward, then swung his palms forward. He straightened his arms and swiftly brought them together before him. This combined attack stirred up a violent gust of wind in the galaxy. It howled, and its presence shook the heavens. This was the combined attack formed by Su Ming fusing with the power of the 400,000 purple galaxies, which was why the wind that was stirred up was also purple. That wind charged forward, and in the blink of an eye, it blew against the origin power, essence of life that belonged to the black Ikang, which the old man in gray was absorbing. It blew away that fog like origin power and scattered it behind the old man in gray. Su Ming did not hesitate when he delivered this attack. Its effect was also incredibly important because it caused the old man in gray to be unable to help but freeze in his absorption and fusion. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1144. At the instant he froze, Su Ming took a swift step forward. The 400,000 purple galaxies behind him rotated with a loud bang and turned into an endlessly huge mouth. As Su Ming closed in, it went to devour the old man in gray. A still, deathly light appeared in the eyes of the old man, formed by the gray Kang. He glared at Su Ming, and at the instant the endlessly huge mouth came to devour him. The old man threw his head back and roared. Indigo and yellow, what are you waiting for? As it roared, the eyes of the Akang in the green galaxy shone. As it moved, it charged towards the invisible barrier in the galaxy where the yellow Akang was, and charged forward with loud bangs. A hint of struggle appeared in the yellow Akang's eyes, but it soon turned into resolve. It rushed out and charged towards the indigo Akang, with the indigo Akang separated by the invisible barrier. Booming sounds surged into the sky. The barrier crumbled, allowing the indigo Akang and the yellow Akang to see each other. They saw the greed in each other's eyes, and without a single word, they crashed into each other. This was a fusion that did not require any divine abilities. As for who would be the dominant party, since the two of them were completely similar, it was difficult to predict. So this is your plan? Su Ming smiled coldly. The huge mouth in the 400,000 galaxies behind him closed in with a howl. The dead-still look in the eyes of the old man in gray became stronger. He lifted his hands, and with his left hand in front of him, he grabbed his right wrist. Once he straightened his right hand into the shape of a knife, he lifted it completely. His eyes instantly lit up before they dimmed, and a destructive power that caused Su Ming's heart to tremble erupted from the old man in gray. Purple, you don't have this style in the memories you obtained. Akang slashes heaven. The old man in gray shouted fiercely, and he swiftly cut down Su Ming through the air with his right hand. A ray of gray light swiftly tore through the galaxy in front of the old man in gray. This scene caused Su Ming's pupils to shrink. The sight of the galaxy being torn apart made him remember what he had seen at the edge of the Fifth Ocean, when Zhu Yukai's life inequity spear swung through the area that could split the sky and earth, stirring up a crack in space that had devoured thousands of people and a few almighties. At that moment, the gray crack before him gave Su Ming a similar feeling. That sense of danger rose in his heart. He also saw the old man who was the gray Akang shatter once he executed that slash, turning into a large amount of Akang's origin power that spread through the area. It was obvious that it had paid the price of wiping out its consciousness to unleash this strike. At the same time, the origin power spreading out from the gray, Akang tumbled backwards and charged towards a galaxy where the indigo and yellow Akangs were fusing together. By the looks of it, it wanted to fuse into that place and be absorbed by the final two Akangs so that they could speed up their fusion and hasten the awakening of the Akang's true form in the ballad. The gray Akang's origin power did not fuse together alone. Instead, it swept up the black Akang's origin power in the area after it had crumbled and fused it into the indigo and yellow galaxy. If Su Ming dodged the incoming gray crack, he would lose the initiative. Once the origin power fused into the indigo and yellow galaxy, not only would it speed up the awakening of the true form of Akang, it would also increase the awakening of the true form of Akang by a large margin. The only way to stop it and make Su Ming stronger was to withstand the incoming slash head-on. Only by doing so would he have enough time to devour the gray and black Akang's origin power, so that even if the indigo and yellow Akangs fused together and awakened, they would still not be Su Ming's opponent. A fierce glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. As his long hair changed, it instantly turned gray. The gray Su Ming symbolized absolute rationality and calmness. At that moment, Even if the galaxy and the heavens were about to crumble, he would not have a single change in his emotions. During that instant, the malicious eye he had obtained at the center of Su Ming's brows bulged out and opened. At the same time, it revealed a crack. A strange and enchanting light shone from within. The third eye could allow Su Ming to magnify everything by several times and find their weaknesses. With the gray robes that were his absolute rationality, it was enough for him to bring forth a power that surpassed what he had in the past. At the same time, the 400,000 galaxies behind him roared and turned into a gaping mouth in space. It became even more ferocious, and its presence was as great as a tidal wave. A gigantic gray moon also appeared behind it. When the moon appeared, the galaxy trembled. Clouds surged in all directions, and booming sounds reverberated in the universe. Su Ming seized the air beside him with his right hand. Immediately, the purplish-black ring on his finger turned into the life inequity spear. Once Su Ming held it in his hand, he closed his eyes. Only the third eye at the center of his brows remained open. He stared at the swiftly closing dimensional crack. When a king slashed down, Zhu Yukai's strike that had swept through the world beyond the fifth ocean continuously appeared in his mind. What joy was there in living? This strike repeated itself 1,000 times in Su Ming's head. Once he continuously magnified it with the art of fine refinement with his third eye, he could see every single tiny change in the strike and the presence that spread out from it. Ikang's slash came charging at him with a loud bang. When it was less than 100 feet away from Su Ming, it was so quick that it closed in on him in an instant. However, all of this seemed to have become much slower when Su Ming looked at it with his third eye. Zhu Yukai's sky-shattering strike had already repeated itself nearly 10,000 times in his mind. A domineering will belonging to an almighty in life realm. That is, a person who has almost stepped into death realm and has seen through life and death, which is why he said those words. What joy is there in living? What joy is there in living? Su Ming mumbled. The crack formed by Ikang's slash closed in on Su Ming with a will to destroy everything. At that moment, it was less than 30 feet away from him. Su Ming's robes fluttered madly, and the gaping mouth formed by the purple galaxy around him showed signs of spreading out. The moon in the lunar Kulpa realm also started trembling. What joy is there in living? If one day all my friends leave me, my mother never wakes up, Su Xianyi disappears, be it my elder, Tian Xiezi, my 3 senior brothers, and all the people I know, will all disappear in the passage of time, and I will be the only one left in the world. Then what joy is there in living? Su Ming could not help but feel a sense of loneliness spreading out from his body. He opened his eyes, and there was loneliness and confusion in them. At the instant Ikang's slash closed in on his body, he lifted the life inequity spear in his right hand and swung it forward gently. With it, even though his appearance and the feeling he gave others was not exactly the same as Zhu Yukai's in the past, they were somewhat similar. With it, the lunar Kulpa realm behind Su Ming immediately shattered and turned into countless shards that charged towards the long spear in Su Ming's hand. They instantly fused into it, causing Su Ming's life inequity spear to look as if it possessed the power to cut open the galaxy. It tore open a crack in the galaxy. At the same time, the gaping mouth formed by the 400,000 purple galaxies behind Su Ming looked as if the life inequity spear in Su Ming's hand had turned into a black hole. It swiftly absorbed the 400,000 galaxies into the tip of the spear like fog, causing the power to cut open the galaxy to instantly increase exponentially. Su Ming shuddered. His heart trembled because he sensed that most of his cultivation base, his life force, and all the essence in his body had been sucked away by the life inequity spear. The life inequity spear drew a dazzling line in front of Su Ming and tore open a crack that was about 5 feet wide. At the instant the crack appeared, a destructive power spilled out with a bang and charged towards the incoming Ikang slash. Violent, booming sounds shook the entire Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. The life inequity spear in Su Ming's hand was bounced off, and he coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. He staggered a few steps backwards, and when he lifted his head, an aloof look appeared in his eyes. This strike could be said to be Su Ming's strongest strike. He had imitated Zhu Yukai's What's Joy in Life? Even though he had not imitated everything, just a third of it was enough to severely injure everything. An almighty in Fate Realm could also fight against the Ikang's slash, which the gray Ikang had obtained by wiping off its consciousness in exchange for an incomplete slash that only had 1/10 of the true Ikang's power in the past. As booming sounds echoed in the air, Su Ming forced his body to stop. A feeling of weakness filled his entire body, and a resolute look appeared on his face. He forced himself to charge forward, then opened his mouth wide and sucked in a sharp breath in the direction of the essence of Ikang that was about to fuse with the yellow and indigo galaxy. With it, the vast power of the gray Ikang and black Ikang tumbled backwards and instantly crawled into Su Ming's body from all parts of his body. As it nourished him, it also caused Su Ming to throw his head back and roar. Cracking sounds came from within him, and his long hair spread from his waist to his feet. His appearance became even more enchanting, and the purple light in his eyes became even more threatening. At the instant Su Ming stopped the gray and black essence of Ikang from fusing with the yellow and indigo galaxy, his roar reverberated in space, and a violent, brutal presence that exuded an endless, primitive, and savage presence erupted from the yellow and indigo galaxy. There was a hint of madness in that presence, along with a will that looked down on the world. As if it had just woken up, it filled the yellow and indigo galaxy. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. When he lifted his right hand, the life inequity spear instantly returned to his hand, and he stared at the tumbling yellow and indigo galaxy. "You want to devour me?" A muffled voice with an ancient presence spread out in all directions from the yellow and indigo galaxy. Almost at the instant the voice appeared, before Su Ming could even do anything, a power of self-destruction spread out from the yellow and indigo galaxy with a bang. As booming sounds surged into the sky, Su Ming's expression immediately changed. What caused his expression to change was not the power of the awakened Ikang and its strength, but the decisiveness and cunning of the Ikang in the ballad in the past. At the instant it self-destructed, Su Ming immediately sensed the 20,000 indigo and yellow stone monuments exploding at the same time in the land with the 100,000 stone monuments. The presence that belonged to Ikang was split into 20,000 parts and instantly seeped into the bodies of the 20,000 cultivators who belonged to them, causing their bodies to swell up. As they roared, the entire Western Ring Nebula's foreign land trembled violently. Swiftly, as if an exit had been forcefully opened, a vast suction force swept up the 20,000 cultivators with Ikang's presence, and they were instantly relocated out of Western Ring Nebula to appear in various corners of Western Ring Nebula. 20,000 parts. As long as you don't devour one part, I, Ikang, will definitely rise to power once more. 20,000 thunderous roars echoed in the entire Western Ring Nebula. This scene was the same as when Ikang had split into 10 parts to recuperate after its battle against Sui Chenzi. However, this time, its injuries were even worse, to the point that it did not dare to stand up. Instead, it chose to split into 20,000 parts. Su Ming's expression was dark as he stared at the empty galaxy of the foreign land. This scene exceeded his expectations, and he had not expected it to happen beforehand. Yet no matter what, he had already entered Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, requesting recommendation votes to be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 1145. As he stared at the empty galaxy of the foreign land, Su Ming's face suddenly turned slightly pale. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, and only then did his expression return to normal. A great amount of life force rose from his body. Once it surrounded him, It turned into a monstrous presence that swept up Su Ming's cultivation base, and it continued rising. Behind him, the gray, red, and golden moons appeared at the same time. As they shone, Su Ming's long hair, which had already reached his feet, danced in the air and formed a circle behind him, causing him to look incredibly strange and enchanting at that moment. His pupils were purple, and he was surrounded by a purple galaxy. As he stood there, he was the master of this place. With my current gray thoughts and personality, I can't imitate the joy in life that contains the utmost emotion and will. If I forcefully imitate it, I can only obtain the form and not the will, and I'll also injure myself, Su Ming mumbled. Fortunately, he had devoured most of the fragments of Ikang's soul. Because of it, he could recover from his injuries as he coughed up a mouthful of blood, or else his injuries would have definitely become even worse. The indigo and yellow Ikang might have split into 20,000 parts and fled, but I have long since become complete. I devoured the other fragments of Ikang's soul to make myself look stronger. Now, if I devour the remaining 20,000, it'll just be icing on the cake. Even if I don't devour them, it won't be a big problem for me. Purple light shone in Su Ming's eyes, and he slowly closed them. After a moment, when he opened them, the entire Western Ring Nebula's foreign land roared. The 800,000 galaxies had all turned purple, and a thick purple hue dyed the entire world purple. I'm already complete, which is why there will not be 200,000 galaxies missing just because the indigo and yellow Ikang left. Su Ming lifted his right hand and swung it in the direction before him. With it, Western Ring Nebula's foreign lands trembled again and began to swiftly split apart. As it did so, booming sounds reverberated in the air, and the 200,000 galaxies that were missing reappeared. Because of it, there were still 1 million galaxies in this place, but they were no longer 10 colors like before. Instead, there was only one color, and that was purple. This was purple taking over the world. This was purple ruling over the world. Su Ming lifted his head and stared at the galaxy. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through Western Ring Nebula's foreign land and see the universe beyond. 20,000 split souls formed from the yellow and green Ikang. I look forward to one of you rising up against the heavens and devouring the other 19,000-something souls. In the end, you will be able to continuously perfect yourself. I look forward to it. Su Ming smiled faintly. 20,000 faint long arcs charged forward in Western Ring Nebula and instantly disappeared into the galaxy. But at the instant they disappeared, faint booming sounds reverberated in space. These were the sounds of the bodies of the 20,000 cultivators self-destructing. This was the ruthlessness of Ikang's real self. To prevent Su Ming from searching for them, it had given up on using these 20,000 cultivators for training, choosing to make other choices instead. At the instant the bodies of the 20,000 cultivators crumbled, nearly 20,000 men and women on the numerous planets in Western Ring Nebula shuddered at that instant, regardless of whether they were fighting, meditating, or doing anything else. It was as if there was an invisible force swiftly rushing into their hearts, taking root, hiding, and growing. The cries of a baby reverberated in the air on one of the planets. In a corner of the planet was a woman lying on the ground. Her body was covered in blood, and her eyes were wide open. She had already breathed her last. The baby crawled out of his mother's corpse. As his cries spread out, his body suddenly shuddered. When his cries disappeared, a hint of yellow light appeared in the baby's eyes. That light disappeared with a flash, and he returned to normal. At the same time, there was a true guard who was originally patrolling the area belonging to True Sacredine World within the forces of power from the 4 great True Worlds, keeping a lookout over Western Ring Nebula. He shuddered and lowered his head. When he lifted it again, a green light shone in his eyes before disappearing. Su Ming stepped into the air in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land and disappeared into the purple galaxy. When he reappeared, he was in the place where the 100,000 stone monuments had originally been. However, at that moment, there were no longer 100,000 stone monuments, but 80,000. At that moment, the place was filled with dead silence. All the cultivators' faces were pale as they stared at the empty spot where the 20,000 stone monuments were. There was fear on their faces. They had also noticed a long time ago that all their stone monuments had turned purple. When Su Ming walked out of the air, a powerful, mighty pressure appeared in the hearts of all the people in the area without him needing to do anything about it. That mighty pressure made them want to worship him, as if they showed even the slightest hint of disrespect, their bodies and souls would immediately be destroyed. "Greetings, my liege." As they trembled, no one knew who was the first to speak. Soon after, all the people in the area worshipped Su Ming as he walked out of the air. "Greetings, my liege." Their voices boomed and reverberated in all directions. Su Ming swept his gaze across the land and landed on the empty spot where the yellow-green Ikang stone monument had originally been. A glint appeared in his eyes, and immediately the empty spot started squirming. Stone monuments rose from the ground, and in an instant, the empty spot disappeared, causing the number of stone monuments in the area to return to 100,000 from the 80,000. 100,000 purple stone monuments, 1,000,000 purple galaxies. This place was Su Ming's universe. Tens of thousands of people worshipped him on the ground. Their trembling, their respect, and fear towards Su Ming, and all sorts of emotions were easily sensed by Su Ming. Su Ming stood in midair and stared at the tens of thousands of people on the ground calmly. He did not speak. Echoing in his ears was the sounds of worship that did not disappear even after a long time had passed. The more he did not speak, the more suffocating and oppressive feeling filled the place. It enveloped the people's hearts in a heavy manner, making it difficult for them to breathe. Sweat slowly broke out on their foreheads. The feeling of being in a life and death situation that was out of their control during that instant turned into a powerful brand that was carved deep into their souls. Their respect towards Su Ming reached an unprecedented height. "I'm the master of this universe," Su Ming said faintly after a long while. When he said those words, the tens of thousands of people worshipped him together again. As their voices reverberated in the air, Su Ming continued, speaking coldly. "Do all of you want to leave?" His words fell into everyone's ears, but no one dared to speak. All of them remained silent. "I will give you some time. Perhaps it will be decades, or perhaps it will be centuries. When I return, I will bring all those who have reached the later stage of world plane realm away. They will follow me and fight against the heavens. I will also bring all of you out of the barren lands of divine essence and fight against the four great true worlds with me. Then, I will give you freedom and the glory you deserve." The impact formed by the words, "out of the barren lands of divine essence," and freedom instantly shook the hearts of the people in the land, causing them to lift their heads simultaneously. When they looked at Su Ming, desire that could not be hidden appeared in their eyes. "Your ancestors have been in the barren lands of divine essence for generations. Entering my universe is your fortune. Train towards a later stage of world plane realm, because only I can bring all of you out of the barren lands of divine essence with dignity. When I return again, it will be the day I will bring all of you out." Su Ming cast a glance at the crowd, then swept his gaze past Zhou Kang. Zhou Kang's expression was apathetic, as if he had already given up hope, causing Su Ming to sigh in his heart. When he turned around, he took a step into the air, and his body instantly disappeared into it. At the same time, a piercing purple light erupted from the 100,000 purple stone monuments. Beyond Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, purple light seeped through the numerous cracks and illuminated the area, dyeing Western Ring Nebula's foreign land purple. At that moment, Su Ming walked out of one of the cracks with a calm expression on his face. When he walked out, his long hair returned to normal. It was no longer gray. As time passed, Su Ming might still be unable to control the changes in his thoughts, but he had already learned how to use the environment around him and the enemies he faced to indirectly change his thoughts. Because of it, his different personalities were revealed. At the instant Su Ming walked out of Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, Zhu Kai, who had been meditating with his eyes closed and had not paid any attention to the 20,000 green and yellow long arcs spreading out, suddenly opened his eyes. When he stared at Su Ming, his pupils shrank, and a strange light shone in them. "You become stronger," Zhu Yukai said calmly. The strange light in his eyes grew even brighter. He slowly stood up, and battle intent radiated from his eyes. At this moment, he was clearly no longer Zhu Yukai, but War Immortal Changhe. "You have the presence of my divine ability on you. You should have copied my style in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. And your presence might seem normal, but there is a primitive will hidden within it. That will is madness, violence, and wants to destroy the world." The fighting spirit in Zhu Yukai's eyes gradually disappeared. Once it returned to normal, he cast Su Ming a profound glance, but did not say anything else. He was not the only one who sensed that Su Ming was different. By his side, Flame Fiend's progenitor also felt his heart tremble in fear when he looked at Su Ming. Flame Fiend's progenitor had been incredibly respectful towards Su Ming, but right then, almost at the instant he saw him, he started trembling. The mighty pressure coming from Su Ming's body made him, an almighty in mastery realm, feel terrified and terrified. It was as if there was a heinous malice hidden within Su Ming's body. That malice seemed to want to destroy the universe, and it exuded an endless mighty pressure on all manner of lives, causing Flame Fiend's progenitor to tremble. When he looked at Su Ming, there was an even greater wariness in his eyes. If it was any other cultivator, perhaps they would not feel it so strongly, but Flame Fiend's progenitor was not a cultivator. He was an alien race, which was why his spiritual senses were much stronger than those of cultivators in the same realm. He could see even more things that were hidden more deeply. In the past, I could still fight against him, but now, if he attacks at full strength, I wonder, how long can I last? Flame Fiend's progenitor instinctively bent down and put on an obsequious expression towards Su Ming. By his side, the bald crane was the least affected when it saw Su Ming. It swaggered to his side, and when it turned around, it cast a sideways glance at Flame Fiend's progenitor with a haughty look on its face. "I only had a slight serendipity in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land," Su Ming said flatly. Once he swept his gaze past Zhu Yukai, he cast his gaze towards the galaxy in the distance. That place was where the four great true worlds were stationed. Gradually, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. "Baldy, do you want your physical body back?" The previous chapter had the wrong number of chapters. There were two 1042s, but in truth, the second 1043s. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.